The girl was pinned against the wall. The guy's low voice said, "Never, never try to get away from me. Having broken me from the inside, you thought that you could escape peacefully," the girl said quietly. "This is not so, Your Highness." But the guy interrupted her and said, "Not Your Highness, she should call him by his name." The guy approached the girl and she saw, under the black strands of hair. His red eyes shone so brightly that it seemed they were about to swallow her up, and the sharp howl of the wind seemed to begin to move away, creating the feeling that in this place, no, in the whole world, there were only the two of them left. He, like a hungry beast, approached with his lips. Let's get back to reality, of course. These were the heroes of the novel that our heroine was reading. She squealed with delight. Rereading the lines of the novel again, she said that this author's writing skills were simply incredible. But then she was called. She was told that a guest from the Imperial Palace had come to see her, and she had been waiting for this moment in the novel for so long, but she had to leave it for later. Our heroine's name is Kayla Marillo. This is a quiet and peaceful estate marina, where she is the only daughter of Viscount Marillo, the founder of the Northern Duchy Research Center at Marin Academy. In other words, she's a fan of novels featuring the Duke of the North. As you may have guessed, our heroine's main hobby is reading these novels, and she especially specializes in studying the Duke's profile. And of course, her dream is to marry the Duke of the North, so every day of her life is very peaceful and eventful. The girl worriedly asked why someone from the Imperial Palace had suddenly come to them, hoping that nothing serious had happened. Cheerful Kayla laughed and said, "Oh well, she had never even been to the capital, let alone the palace." Surely this was a visit to her father, and not to her. But everything turned out differently than our heroine expected. The guy came to her and said that she was just as he had described her. Lady Kayla, His Majesty the Emperor, demanded a divorce from her. So Kayla choked on her tea, interrupted him, and asked him to give her a second to think. What kind of divorce can we talk about? She has never even seen His Majesty. And soon after the guy's explanation, Viscount Marillo's daughter, Kayla, realized all the injustice of the world towards women. Her father, Viscount Isaac, who was sitting next to her, was so worried that he was afraid to say anything to his daughter, who asked. So, the temple registered the marriage by mistake, meaning that strictly on paper she is now married to His Majesty. The guy answered with inappropriate joy, "That's right," and then there was silence. Just as Kayla wanted to ask how this was possible, the boy said, however, according to the divorce procedure provided by Imperial law, after the divorce, the former empress must spend 10 years in seclusion in order to completely lose political power. Consequently, the current Viscountcy of Marillo has been ordered to move to the island of Lika, meaning they will not be able to return to the mainland for 10 years. In return, His Majesty offered worthy compensation, promising vast lands, riches, and an estate. Kayla shouted, "This is complete nonsense." They were making fun of her, since they were the ones who made the mistake. Why should she be held accountable? Kayla was furious, which she had every right to be. The father tried to restrain his daughter, that is, he simply bowed to the stupid rules of the Empire. The guy finished his tea and left. Kayla was still raging outside the door when the guy asked Ryan if that was really enough. Ryan replied that they had done everything they had to. After some time, even Kayla cooled down. Or rather, she was in despair. She said, "No matter how much you think, this is complete absurdity." Father agreed with this, Kayla asked. "Even for the Imperial family, this is too much, isn't it?" Father agreed again. Then Kayla got angry again and asked loudly if her father wasn't angry with this attitude. They made a mistake. "Why should she clean it up?" the father replied, "but they cannot disobey the Imperial decree." Whether it was cowardice or loyalty, it didn't matter. Kylie's father was a commoner knight. 10 years ago, he took part in the war and became a hero, for which he received the title of Viscount and the Marine Estate with its lands. He is not interested in noble feuds. He is a truly loyal subject of his people, ready to give his life for the Empire. But what is the point in obeying such an absurd order? It is not much different from the fate of a traitor exiled for 10 years. Besides, a divorce at 21, she, by the way, also has her own plans for life. After all, she must marry the Duke of the North. Suddenly, a fire phoenix appeared and said that being bound by human rules is simply terrible. However, one must not lose heart. She belongs to the great bonds that control the flow of the world. It was Kiki and Kylie knew her. Kylie didn't want to hear the truth about the flow of the world and all that. She considered it all nonsense. After some thought, Kylie decided that she would not sacrifice herself like her father. He will create a commotion in the temple and force them to correct the situation if nothing works. He will also look into the Imperial palace. She must personally see the face of the man called her husband, then Kiki thought. Finally, these bonds began to work. Kylie has transformed into a young man, a very handsome young man, and now she needs to get to the stables. Did they really think she would just give in to it? Kylie asked. But it turns out she's not as spontaneous as she thought. After all, her father was already waiting for Kylie in the stable, and it looks like he immediately understood what Kylie was up to. Because, he asked, he was heading to the capital. Kylie didn't answer anything. Then her father said, "The Emperor's order is a nobleman's duty and a knight's honor. If Kayla really wants to go, she must defeat him first. It seems like Dad has gone crazy for a long time. It's good that Kylie gave him a beating." But the old man was even glad, he mumbled. His daughter had already mastered the fire rune at an advanced level, enough to stand up to her old father. The boys asked. It seems that Mrs. Kayla crossed the main gate to send a chase after her. The father replied that there was no need. They had done everything possible to prevent the escape, hadn't they? It's time for her to be able to make decisions on her own. With her blood, she shouldn't live under the eternal guardianship and decrees of her elders. She must try herself in real trials, the gate of the city of Muta, a paradise for travelers and the largest trading city of the empire. Since this is the only route from the south to the capital, not only all the merchants of the continent, but also countless travelers and mercenaries. Messengers, ordinary workers, and bandits arrive here, so this place is always overflowing with people and money. Finally, Kylie reached the city. Despite her appearance, Kylie is still our main character, but it seems Kayla overdid it when she decided to cover a 2-week distance in 3 days. Galloping with all her might, without any breaks, the strange horse wanted to eat some meat, but Kayla pulled it away in time. And she whispered to him that people must not know that he was a hybrid horse. They must take her for an ordinary traveler. The horse thought his owner had completely lost her mind and was planning to feed him pitiful pieces of dried beef. Kylie barely managed to push him into the stable. He asked them to be patient for a week, because when they get to the capital they will be able to eat whatever they want, but there are too many people here. While the horse was calling at the top of its lungs for Kylie, she only said that her horse always had a hard time with separation and came to the hotel. She asked for a room for one and food. Kylie sighed heavily and said he almost died of hunger. The men at the next table noticed her and whispered, "This is definitely a man." But as soon as Kylie started gobbling up the food from their plates, they turned around, their stereotypical thinking helping Kylie. Kylie was just really hungry. She remembered her father telling her that if she left home, things would be hard. She looked at the meat and thought about leaving some for Rune, the horse, but then decided that would be too risky. They might get caught, so poor carnivorous Rome will have to starve for a week. Its kind belongs to the most ancient creatures, obtained from a mixture of a dragon and a horse. In other words, it can be attributed to the sacred beasts. This is an incredibly intelligent carnivore, so resilient that it can cross the entire continent in a week, of course. Their value is indescribable. Such beasts are difficult to find outside the Imperial family, and Kayla was lucky to pick one up on the road. She simply bumped into him on the street, right in the middle of the battlefield. How Kylie herself ended up there is still a mystery. Kayla offered Rome some dried meat, but the strange horse only snorted in response, and he added that even if she was from those bloods, she wouldn't fall for just any piece. This pathos was feigned. Kylie quickly managed to tame it. The war with the Cern Empire lasted for about 10 years, and Kayla grew as it progressed. Kylie's father often took her with him to the recent battlefields. That's how she ended up there, and when she turned 10, the war finally ended. Now that Kylie has decided to enjoy her youth, she is told to spend another 10 years in exile. Muta is the largest trading city of the Freza Empire, and there are those who rule Muta. In some aspects, they are even more powerful than the Imperial family, and more influential than the temple itself. Tom Holden Corporation, a joint stock company, has no place in Nuth where Tom's hands haven't reached. From children's candy to black market money, this massive company dominates Freza's empire, surprisingly in the hands of one young man. The men told him that the price of imported hay had gone up this time, and Tom gave them orders. But then Tom noticed a strange horse. He approached Rome and asked where this horse came from. Then the guy ran up and said that a guest of the Hotel Toma had left her, that something was wrong. Tom asked if the guest was from a noble family. The guy replied that he was just a groom and didn't know the details. But since he stayed at this inn, most likely he was a commoner, Tom ordered to find out about him. The man asked why the gentleman suddenly became interested in the owner of this horse. Tom replied that if he wanted to do business wisely, he needed to be more discerning. This was not an ordinary horse, but a hybrid. Luke asked, but where did some commoner get it from? Tom replied that most likely their guest has reasons to hide his identity. But if this is an attempt by the Emperor to send his man to them, the situation will change dramatically. Meanwhile, our Kylie was sleeping peacefully in her bed, unaware that she had been under surveillance from the very first day. 2 robbers had already crept up to her, they said, so it looks like a girl. She looks more like a runaway noblewoman, so much for the secrecy. Kylie's entire personality was revealed in one day. The duo known as the Knight Brothers decided that it was none of their business. They said that nothing that could be stolen would be hidden from them, the legendary Knight Brothers. In fact, they were petty thieves. The poor things wanted to pose to look cool, but in the end, one of them fell. A roar echoed throughout the room. Then one whispered, "She won't wake up." The second answered, "Of course not. That's impossible." He remembers how much wild mushroom powder was in her dish, enough to knock out a herd of elephants. So they can safely take all her things. When they found the gold coins, they realized that she was indeed a noble woman. They were lucky, and they were afraid that they would run into a poor guy again, but then the guy noticed Kylie's sword. And they said he doesn't know for sure, but it looks like some kind of antique. She couldn't have been wearing a real sword. While these fools were discussing whether it was a sword or not, Kylie woke up and they didn't even notice until she punched one of them. Before the second one could say anything, Kayla grabbed him by the throat and also slammed him into the wall. Kayla asked how the hired killers dared to disturb her. It seemed that our heroine was very irritated by such a night rise. When the boys got what they deserved, they obediently sat down and continued listening to Kylie's orders. Kayla ordered them to tell only the truth. She looked at them with such a terrible look that all the pathos of the guys ran away. And Kayla asked if they tried to steal her precious Krita. The guy shouted, "No, that's not true at all. They don't even know what this Krita is. They are just thieves who wanted to get some coins." Their howling had no effect. Kayla asked if they wanted to say that they, a couple of thieves, were wandering around the area and completely by chance chose her room. "This is complete nonsense," the guy shouted. "But it's true. They were just hoping to make a little money off of young and inexperienced travelers. They usually put sleeping pills in the visitors' food beforehand, by the way. They are quite famous in these parts. They are the legends of the Muta brothers of the night. They are able to steal anything and anywhere. This is their working motto." The boys showed off their method and boasted of modest success. Kayla asked, "So they use sleeping pills. They are quite expensive," the guy replied. "Few people know about it. But the wild mushroom powder works great as a sleeping pill, but it didn't work on her." Kayla sighed and said, "Wild mushrooms, they don't affect her at all." Marino's Red Lion, Knight Isaac Marillo, was part of the knightly company along with Kylie's adopted uncles and aunts. Among them was a young warrior who had earned a reputation as a master of medicine, whom Kayla called Aunt Layla. Layla made an invaluable contribution during the fighting, when there were problems with the supply of medicines, but she still managed to bravely take part in all the battles. The problem was that she became overly attached to little Kayla, but thanks to a very subtle approach to the dosage of dangerous substances, Layla was able to develop a strong immunity to poisons in Kayla. Kayla passed out so quickly because she was tired from the road, that's all. Almost no herbs work on her. The guys were perplexed. They couldn't understand how this was possible. Not only did she beat up 2 grown men, but herbs don't even work on her. Kayla asked if she should probably hand them over to the city guard. The guys shouted, begging for mercy this time. They will no longer engage in theft. Hunger and despair drove them to this dirty act. Their mother is seriously ill. They are having difficulty finding money for medicine. Suddenly there is a knock on the door, and the man asked if everything was okay. A strange noise was coming from the dear guest's room. The fools screamed and begged for mercy so loudly that the hotel owner heard them. Suddenly, Kayla told the 2 idiots to take the money and get lost. They had 10 seconds. The guys were surprised that Kayla not only let them down, but also allowed them to take the money. Kayla said that even though they were thieves, they were. But it doesn't look like they've managed to injure or kill anyone, so they might think this is their chance to get off the slippery slope. Let them definitely spend this money on medicine for their mother. It's strange that Kayla believed their story so easily. The boys froze and called Kayla the Red Witch. Kayla got angry and asked, it seems she was hasty in deciding to let them go. Then the cowards quickly collected the coins and, thanking him for the favor, hurried out into the street. Already on the street, the cowards burst out laughing and shouted, "What a fool, she so easily believed this stupid story, but they have never seen their parents in their lives." Then they became quiet and said, for a second it seemed that they had met the Red Witch again. Then one thought popped into their heads, maybe they really should stop doing this. When Kayla lied to the owner that there were no burglars in her room, she sat down on her bed and said, she doesn't remember her mother at all. Maybe that's why she gave in to emotions. It seems like she really believed it. She's not the brightest of minds. Her eerie gaze darted to the window, and her voice dropped as she asked if he was in on it with them. It turned out that there was another guy hiding outside the window. It is unclear how she noticed him, but as soon as she asked him a question, the guy quickly ran away. Kayla decided that it was another thief, and that it looked like there was lawlessness in this area. Kayla didn't pay much attention to it, and decided to just go to bed. And the guy was already reporting everything to Tom. His name was Sasha Lin. He looked about 18 years old. He used gold coins from the central bank for payment. They say that upon arrival, he was covered in dust and dirt, like a homeless person. But the guest boldly approached the worker as if nothing had happened. He ate as if he had been starving for a long time, and at the same time he observed basic etiquette. Tom thought for a moment and said, "It seemed like a young scion of southern nobles. The hybrid horse in the stable looked emaciated. To get her to this state, you need to jump non-stop for at least 3 days. It is logical to assume that its owner has come all this way from the depths of the southern lands of the Empire, most likely. The nobleman has an extremely urgent matter." At that moment, a guy knocked on the door and said that he had managed to carry out surveillance as the master had ordered. Besides him, in the indicated place there were the so-called Brothers of the Night, Luke asked, those petty thieves operating in their city. The boy replied, yes, he came closer to help the young man in case of danger, but he easily overpowered the brothers. Moreover, if he understood correctly, the guy has immunity to any poisons. As soon as the guest suspected his presence, he immediately retreated. It's impossible to say exactly what rune he's using yet, but it seems they're dealing with a rune wielder. Tom grinned and asked Luke what was going on with the Imperial family. He hadn't heard anything from Xena's elders. Luke replied that there was no news yet. Xena had only sent some financial reports, nothing out of the ordinary. Then Thomas said he increasingly suspected that this man was a spy of His Majesty. Let them arrange a meeting for them. Everything should go as naturally as possible. The Servan War, 20 years ago, the continent of Ashi was consumed by the flames of imperial ambition, the imperial family wielding the power to destroy human consciousness. It swept through many countries, leaving behind devastation and mountains of dead people, and when the entire continent was on the brink of collapse. The Furza Empire, led by the knight Isaac Marillo, successfully recaptured vast southern lands. It was this event that earned him the title of the Red Lion and marked the beginning of an even more brutal war between the two empires. And after 9 agonizing years of war, at the Battle of the Carrion Fields, the situation turned upside down in an instant, thanks to just one man, who with his own hands beheaded all the members of the imperial family of Servan, the military and strategic genius of this young man. He united 70% of the entire continent under his banner and ended a bloody war. This was the 16-year-old crown prince of the Furza Empire. From now on, the sole ruler of the 5 great dynasties of the entire continent, Jan Firma, in 10 years of reign, managed to stabilize the entire foreign policy situation. But now he was not happy. A dark aura emanated from him. He slammed the table and asked. He seemed to have misheard. Could they repeat it? He is married. The assistant answered in a trembling voice. Yes, it looks like the temple made a mistake. The registration was completed 3 years ago. Therefore, according to official documents, the emperor currently has a wife, Yang asked, hiding his passive aggression under a smile. And they report this to him only 3 years later. The assistants apologized. Jan sighed and said, enough, let them fix everything quietly. So that no traces of this ridiculous mistake would remain, the assistants then mumbled fearfully, unfortunately, this is impossible. The marriage process is under the jurisdiction of the temple. The imperial palace has no right to interfere in their affairs. This was the first time such a situation had arisen. An awkward silence reigned in the hall, and the emperor remained silent. Also silently, Jan picked up the papers. The great Emperor Jan Furza, war hero, savior of the entire continent. In the absence of the general public, he reveals his true nature, namely that of a ruthless psychopath. The tower dog, the scoundrel, the sadist, the psycho said he needs a meeting with the high priest. Let them organize it immediately, right now. Count Owen had long been accustomed to the Emperor's duplicity, so he was not very surprised by such a hysterical outburst. He just prayed that the temple would fix everything immediately so that he wouldn't have to endure John's tantrums anymore. But when they came to the temple, the bishop refused them with a smile, saying that it was impossible. In this situation, I can only sympathize with poor Owen, hysterical Ian asked why. The old man answered, because that is what the rules say, birth documents of a member of the Imperial family. His betrothals and everything else are always regulated by the temple. This unbreakable rule was introduced to prevent any possible fraud. Inside the Imperial palace, for this reason, even the Emperor is not able to change their contents. Jan said this was not a simple matter of editing documents, but a temple error that needed to be corrected immediately. The old man said that this was only Jan's statement, and according to the temple records, the marriage registration was filed and signed 3 years ago. The period during which this document can be corrected is 1 year, after which all records are blessed and sealed. No matter what their reason, from now on His Majesty has no right to change them. Moreover, since the event is very important, the document was blessed 3 times. Jan said that if they invite all the people involved to testify, it could affect the legitimacy of the document. The old man interrupted him, asking how Yang would prove this, how they could know that his legal wife was not under pressure from the Emperor who had changed his tastes. It was becoming increasingly difficult for the psychotic Jan to contain his anger. He asked if the old man even realized what he was accusing him of. Owen asked the hysterical Ian to recall the rune. This is a sacred temple. The old man was not frightened or impressed. He said that the Emperor was the most influential and powerful man in their entire empire, and therefore the laws should be enforced most strictly. When it comes directly to the Emperor, as High Priest, he declares that His Majesty's marriage will not be annulled. At home, the sadist tore down the walls around himself, repeating that he could simply burn everything to hell and the people would get used to the new religion. These cretins have completely lost their minds. They dared to seal the records of the Emperor's marriage without even warning him. But it seems that now our unbalanced Emperor is about to receive more bad news. A few years ago, Owen told Ian that he had a lot of paperwork piling up. But Ian told Owen to figure it out himself. It wasn't for nothing that he had hired the Academy's brightest mind as his assistant. Owen replied, but he had no right to sign them himself. Some documents His Majesty needed to review personally. Ian thought it was too boring. Owen asked if the rebels had staged another assassination attempt. Ian replied that they were idiots who thought they could kill him. So what about the documents? Asked Jan. Owen replied, the Emperor has papers from the temple, which Jan must look through himself. That is the law. Ian told Owen to put them down. Owen wanted to say that these documents were important, but the hysteria was all true. He hardly decided anything. He was not good with documents in general. The hysteric himself was to blame for everything. Ian listened to Owen silently, his face showing no emotion, but not for long. He again blamed Owen for everything, saying that Owen should have prevented all the potential problems. Poor Owen was screaming, trying his best to get the Emperor's attention to those documents. Then another blonde guy appeared and told Owen not to bother his brother. It is impossible that they would not find a way out of this situation, because in fact they are not a married couple. The guy, who we understand is the sadist's brother, was the one who suggested a divorce. Considering that this was the only solution now, Owen agreed that all records would remain in the documents. But practically no one has the right to view them, so for a palace this is a good option. Just now, Jan asked who this woman was. Owen answered, she is a noblewoman from the provincial lands. The eldest daughter of Viscount Marillo, Lady Kayla Marillo for some reason. Upon hearing this, the guys froze. The Red Lion himself, Sir Isaac, said the elder brother, and Ian asked if it was really the same daughter. It seems Kayla is famous, but Owen didn't understand their reaction, because he only knows that Isaac is a knight from the common people. Owen, who received the title for his military service, said she is now 21 and has not seen any problems. Suddenly Jan said, let them forget about the divorce. A very young lady will have the stigma of a divorced woman. Is that a big deal? Moreover, a divorce from the Emperor meant living in exile for 10 years. Owen was in shock. This selfish man thought about someone other than himself. Owen believed that the divorce would only bring benefits to Kayla. She will get a lot of perks as a former empress, but Jan replied that the fact remains a fact. They risk ruining the young lady's future. There are other options. The brother was surprised by Jan's behavior and then suggested another option. He asked then what the option was with national mourning. Owen shouted, "Now is not the time for jokes, Sir Ryan." Then Ryan asked if none of the options worked, why not just marry her? Maybe it was destiny itself. Hysteric got angry again. Then Ryan said, "Oh well, I don't like this or that, like little children." Like little children. Ian then slammed the table and Ryan closed his mouth and said hysterically, "Ryan Bart de Friese, we need to step outside for a moment. There are two main types of magic in the Furza Empire. The first is the invocation of magic using minerals, mana stones. They work on the basis of complex rituals and calculations. The second is runic magic, which relies on natural forces by accumulating them in the body of the magician. Magic is widespread in the regions. It is used for routine purposes and is quite accessible thanks to the presence of mana stones. However, runic magic requires physiological characteristics, and it is not within everyone's power. In other words, a person must have a natural gift. In the Furza Empire, there are people with outstanding combat and magical skills. They're called Rune Knights. By "let's go outside for a while," the Emperor meant, prepare to be beaten. Both brothers could use rune magic. Ryan had the Wind Rune, also known as the Power of the Flow. Owen stood nearby and watched. He was already used to such emotional duels. However, the Power of the Flow is most effective for combat, which is why most Rune Knights, including Sir Ryan, chose the Wind Rune. In contrast, the Ice Rune, also known as Frost Power, is considered much less effective for battle. However, as all canons suggest, our hysterical emperor was special. Ian played Thor and shot a thunderbolt at his brother. Luckily for Ryan, Ian didn't shoot at him. Now agitated, Ryan asked if his brother had overdone it with the Wind Rune. But before Ryan could finish speaking, Ian attacked him. It seems that Ryan is the type who likes to chat, and Ian is the type who likes cruelty. Of course, Ryan managed to block Ian's attack, but not as successfully as he would have liked. After all, his poor sword broke, such powerful streams of energy from an ordinary training sword. Ryan decided it would be better to break the distance, but he only tried to run away. When he realized that he couldn't, Ian had already managed to freeze his leg. In a panic, Ryan looked at his leg and at his brother, and laughed nervously. Ryan said he was giving up, but his brother attacked him with a smile, seeming to enjoy torturing people. The Emperor has control over all 5 elemental runes, which is one of the reasons why he is the sole ruler of the 5 great dynasties of the continent. Ian said it seemed like he hadn't been giving his only younger brother enough discipline lessons. He should have spent more time raising her. He felt sorry for that. Ryan just laughed awkwardly, and Ian said Ryan should be grateful that he had been gentle with him. Then he pointed his sword at his brother again and said, "Sir Ryan de Friese." He goes to the Marillo estate and tells them about the divorce, personally. Ryan mumbled in panic, but it's a 2-week ride there. He's the captain of the palace guard, and her brother will really send her there. So, 2 weeks later, at the Marillo estate, Ryan arrived and told Kayla about the divorce. And afterward, I thought my brother was very gentle when it came to Isaac Marillo, when that former commoner had brazenly refused the Emperor. Instead of punishing him, Jan accepted the position of commander of the troops and granted Isaac a noble title and personal estates. Ryan thought he would have to put pressure on them using this fact, but it didn't seem like it was necessary. He thought it was an ordinary backwater estate, with an old retired knight and his ill-bred daughter. No need to worry. Ian was right. He raised his brother poorly. Ryan, the only brother of the current ruler, who renounced the life of a nobleman to become the Emperor's swordsman and achieved the title by his own efforts. But this young man didn't yet know that a poorly brought-up girl from a backwater estate, as Ryan believed, was capable of creating such a stir in the Empire. The guy approached Luke, Thomas's secretary, to ask about Sasha Lynn. They needed to resolve this issue urgently. What Luke would order, Luke thought, and said, the boss ordered to organize everything as naturally as possible. And then he asked if there was any confirmation of that assumption about a hybrid horse. The guy answered, the owner said that he was leaving tomorrow and only asked to give the horse some water. Since hybrids eat only meat, it will not be difficult for them to discover this fact. Then Luke said that they would use this method, and after some time, Kayla returned to her disobedient hybrid. She froze in shock because this very strange animal destroyed everything around itself, and she gorged herself on meat. What an unnatural sight. People were screaming. The horse had caused a riot in the butcher shop and was eating meat. This is not a horse, but a monster, people repeated in horror. Kayla went up to her stupid roam and called him. Naturally, Kayla was furious and asked if Rome would please explain to her what was going on here. Rome broke out in a cold sweat and, in a panic, tried to explain that this was a misunderstanding. He was suddenly seized by a terrible hunger. Of course, this didn't calm Kayla down at all. She shouted that there was a misunderstanding. He was tired of living. It seemed they had a telepathic connection. Rome didn't want to let go of the meat and asked to eat at least one more piece. Kayla screamed that he was crazy, that he should let go immediately before she chopped him into horse meat herself so she could tear the meat out of Rome's mouth. But the meat landed right on the face of the stunned owner of Tom's butcher shop, Hans. The poor guy lost his stall because of a strange horse, and then the man who planned it all came along. Luke asked Kayla as if nothing had happened, so he was the owner of this horse. Both Kayla and the wayward Rome broke out in a cold sweat because they understood that now there would be no end to the problems. But Kayla wanted to remain unnoticed so much. Already at the estate, she apologized for her horse's behavior. It's not like him to say that he usually doesn't cause any trouble, and this incident came as a real shock to him. They had planned to leave Muta this morning, who knew that everything would turn out like this. As Kayla spoke, Luke thought, "Everything is going as the boss expected. This is not an ordinary traveler at all." Anyone else in his place would have begged for forgiveness in tears and on his knees, but Sasha Lin is suspiciously calm, and the water, infused with an appetite stimulant, was even more effective than they thought. This monster broke through 3 buildings to get to the food, but without that, they wouldn't have been able to organize everything, Kayla asked. "They want compensation." "After all, they own that counter," Luke replied. "Their subordinate owns it. They are now at the headquarters of Tom Holden's company. And the meat counter that was destroyed is run by their man, so they will take on the legal process themselves." Kayla replied, "He had heard about their company. It looks like everything will go easier than he thought." Luke replied, "Right." And they both laughed awkwardly, but each thought that stupid Rome had made a mess in the big shot's shop. And Luke thought the guy remained calm. Even after hearing Thomas's name, he became more and more suspicious. Luke said that since the losses were significant, he was not at liberty to deal with them personally, so he declined. He went out and opened the door to his boss, who praised Luke for his work. Kayla was worried about how much money he would ask for. But not for long, because Thomas appeared in front of her. He greeted Kayla and said that, as he was informed, the horse had caused a little trouble. But Kayla didn't listen to him at all, because he was a black-haired guy with red eyes. And with a coal-black suit, in general, everything is just the way Kayla likes it. Her cup even fell at the sight of it. And so, all emotional, she inadvertently screamed, "He is the Duke of the North." Thomas's gaze immediately changed. A dark aura began to emanate from him, and he wondered how he knew this. The brilliant entrepreneur Thomas with the gilded hand, despite his lowly origins, now has a large capital. Than many high-ranking nobles, however, this is not his real identity. Eugene Vine de Servan, the last scion of the Imperial family, and not only that. He is also the leader of the rebel forces who want to revive their empire, once holding the title of Duke. And he owned vast northern territories, the true Duke of the North, Kayla guessed. But is it good for her? The guy doesn't look kind. Maybe he's as crazy as Emperor Yang. Thomas, or rather Eugene, thought, this young man, no, looks more like a girl. She even hides her gender. How interesting. Judging by the way she holds the cup, she is clearly the daughter of a noble family. But what's more important is that she knows about his origins. The naive guy doesn't know that Kayla is just a fan of the stories of novels. Then Thomas, with a creepy look, asked the young man if he could clarify what the Duke of the North meant he shouldn't play poker. It was immediately obvious what he was thinking about. Thomas asked what he wanted to say, and he was thinking about it himself. Depending on her answer, he will decide whether to finish her off right here and now. What creepy guys surround our heroine. And Kayla only now realized what she had blurted out and apologized for it, answering, "No, nothing." But Thomas continued to press. He asked, the guest had just called him the Duke of the North. Kayla laughed awkwardly and replied, "It was a slip of the tongue." "There's no point in thinking about it. Maybe it's time to talk about compensation," Thomas thought, so awkwardly trying to change the subject, wanting to fool him. And yet, he managed to calm his sadistic nature and sit down. Kayla asked, "So how much would he owe them?" Then Thomas said, "About this, they can count right here and now." Thomas pulled out his abacus from somewhere and masterfully began to count everything: the costs of repairing 3 buildings, compensation for losses, moral damages. He seemed to like it, and finally finished listing Rumi's merits and said the final amount was 50,000 rubles. However, part of the blame also lies with the carelessly equipped stable, so they are willing to cover 10% of all costs. So Sasha got 45,000 rubles. She was practically glowing with happiness, thought Kayla. Finally she spoke. God, this is a tidy sum, but what can you do? For a commoner, she is too calm. Just think, 50,000 would buy a dozen houses, and Kayla didn't even flinch when she heard the amount. It's also worth noting that Muta is a shopping center, and the capital is nearby, so the prices themselves are a bit higher than in other places. But that doesn't matter to our Kayla. She has a trust fund set up, and if she withdraws money, her father will be informed. The carefree daughter decided that her father could handle these problems himself, but the impudent little girl shifted the responsibility onto her daddy. Since her father was looking for her, he would probably come to Mutu in person, but even that didn't bother Kayla. She continued to smile. Thomas watched her the whole time and thought, she probably realizes that 50,000. This is a fabulous sum, and yet she agreed to pay it off so easily. It would be logical to finally stop pretending to be a commoner. Why is she wasting time on this? Maybe she is just checking him out. The poor guy didn't understand that she was just a fool. It was hard for him to read what was on her mind, and there was nothing on her mind. Kayla said that she didn't have that kind of money on her. He needs to withdraw money from the Imperial Bank. Can he go there? Here is Thomas's chance. He said there was no such bank in Muta. He would have to go to the capital, but they couldn't let him go like that. He would have to leave a deposit. Kayla replied that he didn't have anything with him. Thomas said that the horse was a hybrid. It would do just fine. Only now, after some time, did it dawn on Kylie that Thomas knew about Rome. And only now, Kayla remembered that Rome had broken through a couple of buildings and was eating meat in front of the crowd. It finally dawned on our little fool that Thomas had realized she was no commoner. She said awkwardly, he could leave the horse, but how would he get to another city? Thomas replied that he had personal business in the capital. Why don't they go together? Kayla agreed. A little later, Luke asked if the boss was going to go to the capital with that young man, that is, the girl. There has been no noise from the Emperor lately, but this could very well be a trap. Thomas asked Luke if he knew the most effective way to look into a person's soul. All you have to do is keep talking to him, no matter how clever he is at negotiating and deceiving. Over time, even the most sophisticated tricksters can reveal all their secrets, and their plans become obvious, and the journey to the capital will take all day. He will slowly find out all her secrets. Thomas is too focused on himself. Kayla came on her own business. She doesn't care about his plan for a coup. He seemed to think he was too important, and so they were both riding in a carriage to the capital. Kayla still thought of Thomas as a victim, so she didn't know how to act. So she decided it was best to start with a light compliment. She laughed awkwardly. He really does look like a northern duke, which is exactly the kind of phrase that could get her into trouble. Poor Thomas had no idea what she was talking about. He thought it was a provocation, because he really was the hostile duke of these lands. That's why he said he was poorly informed about the northern lands. He was just an ordinary businessman. Then Kayla was shocked by that. Thomas was already in a panic when the guy didn't read her stupid novels, thinking that this was some kind of sophisticated plan. And Kayla said in a serious tone, "Okay, in just one day, she will tell him everything there is to know. He learns about the great Duke of the North, and later poor Eugene will bitterly regret it." Kayla started his quiz. The first question, your beloved slipped and fell, his actions. Kill the architect who designed the corridor, kill the servant responsible for cleaning, kill the shoe designer. Thomas didn't know about the nonsense in the novels. He asked why they kill innocent people and what the title of Duke had to do with it. But Kayla asked another question. Her lover has insomnia, his actions, killing the furniture maker, killing the maid who didn't keep an eye on her, killing the tailor who made her pajamas. Thomas, already in a panic, asked why someone had to be killed. This is a test for personality disorder. But Kayla asked the third question. The Emperor sends his beloved to war, where she will inevitably die. His actions. Thomas shouted, "If this is the Emperor's order, he must obey. What can we talk about here?" Kayla's fantasy world burst and she screamed, "He doesn't look like the Duke of the North at all." Her silly fantasies collided with reality because Thomas is a real Duke of the North. Kayla said that since ancient times it has been known that a duke must be strong and cold-blooded, handsome and mysterious. But what is more important, he must be wonderful in bed. And Kayla did not hear the boundaries at all, even the calm. Thomas blushed. He had absolutely no idea what was wrong with her, and now he was asking her to change the subject of the conversation. For example, about the purpose of his visit, or about the horse. But Kayla answered, no, there was no way to dodge it. Let him think that he was very lucky. After all, he won't be able to find a more knowledgeable expert in the field of studying northern novels. She was being disingenuous with that, since she has no experience, only stupid novels. But Eugene will remember these knocks on the road until the end of his days. Luckily for Eugene, they finally arrived, and Kylie's attention turned to the capital. It's her first time seeing the capital, so she's so excited she asked if Thomas could drop her off here. The poor guy immediately agreed. He himself was already praying for this trip to end as quickly as possible. Finally, he's saved, Thomas thought. Kayla asked, she needs to withdraw money and buy his horse with it, right? Thomas replied, yes, that's right. Then extended his hand and asked if my lady would allow him to help her. Kayla was so fixated on his face that she didn't hear milady at all. It seemed his beauty had turned her head. And she didn't realize that her cover had been blown. She just thought his image was too good. She said that even taking into account his appearance, she could not count the exam for him, 60 points maximum. He would only be able to be called the Northern Duke when he reached 90 points. Thomas didn't care about that. Kayla forgot her sword in karate. She only said that when she becomes a duke, she will allow herself to be kidnapped. Thomas asked why he wanted to kidnap my lady, but Kayla only curtsied and said goodbye to him. When she called him a Grand Duke, she was of course referring to book dukes. Little did she realize that in front of her was the real hostile duke, Luke, who was unaware of her obsession with book dukes. Not understanding why Thomas was letting her go so easily since his identity was revealed, he asked to send a spy after her. Thomas replied, no, let them leave everything as is. There is nothing to worry about for now. Eugene, after the resolution of his homeland, was obsessed only with the idea of revenge. He did not care about anything except this goal. What happened? The whole way, Eugene was afraid that he was about to go crazy. It seemed that her knowledge of the Northern Duke was bottomless. She didn't stop her story even at night. And where did such a fragile body get so much energy from? Thomas was shocked that Kayla cared so much about the image of the fictional Duke. He tried to pull himself together because he thought that this witch wanted to drug him. By the way, Kayla didn't want anything like that. Finally exhaling, Thomas noticed something. It seems that this is the same sword that Kayla left in the carriage, and yet she guarded it so well before that. Kayla, meanwhile, finally realized that Thomas was addressing her as a lady. But this didn't particularly bother Kayla. She passed by the temple, that very temple. She believed that if she simply talked to the priests and explained that the marriage was a mistake, everything would be resolved. Kayla introduced herself and demanded an audience with the high priest, but there was no answer. But the church was supposed to be open to parishioners 24/7, so Kayla didn't give up and kept knocking. She started screaming for them to open the door, and finally the little priest appeared. And the kid said the free food distribution is in the building in front of the square, not here. Kayla laughed and replied that she was not actually a tramp. Her name was Kayla Merillo, the daughter of the great Viscount Isaac Murillo, Lord of Marino. She requests a meeting with the high priest. Kayla really decided that she should take her word for it. Besides, no one had seen her before. It was her first time in the capital. And the old man who planned everything asked, "Did it work?" The boy answered, "It seems." Then the old man said, "If she comes to them again in the future, let him send her away as well." The boy asked why they did not let her into the temple. The old man replied that she had to meet someone else first. The sun was beginning to set, and Kayla was dying of hunger, having chatted so much with the Northern Duke. "I completely forgot to eat on the road, but first I need to go to the bank, and tomorrow, try to meet with the high priest again." Kayla thought she could easily withdraw money from her account and continue her walk, but then another problem awaited her. The bank was already closed, and it doesn't work at all on weekends, so she wasn't happy about this surprise. Then she remembered about the distribution of free food. She would have to forget about her pride. She felt a little ashamed, but Kayla still came to the building, although she was late there too. Now I have to sleep in the open air and among people who have nothing. And only now she realized that giving all her money to some thieves was not her best idea. Now she is alone in the capital, without a single penny in her pocket and without even Rome. She would have to survive here for 2 whole days. At least her dear Krita was still with her, Kayla thought. Carefree Kayla only now noticed that her sword was missing, and it was already dark. Now her precious sword was in the hands of the Northern Duke. He was examining it. And Kayla decided to shift the responsibility for her holy head onto Thomas. He shouted that the fake Duke of the North with his charming face initially wanted to bewitch her. Firstly, he is not fake, and secondly, no, he did not want to. Meanwhile, in the palace, Owen said that the Emperor could not do this. Ian asked why. He just wanted to look at his people. Owen replied, there will be a real commotion on his face. Ian replied, he will wear something unremarkable. Owen replied, it won't work because his appearance is too easily recognizable. He thinks people can be deceived that easily. At least John understands how many problems the guards get into with every walk he takes. Therefore, he asks the Emperor to refrain from secret inspections and let him organize an official tour. But Jan was too lazy. He said he didn't want to. It was too much fuss. Clara, a palace guard, came to the rescue and said that Count Owen's fears were well-founded. So what about the pills? They can change your hair color and gloss for about a day. No side effects, but if Yang uses the rune, the effect will disappear immediately. Owen said that with looks like that, maybe problems could be avoided. Instead of a door, for effect, Ian chose a window and ordered Owen, not a word to the guards. Owen sighed and said he had never heard of such drugs before. Clara replied that it was not for nothing that she was called a genius of modern medicine. In general, the original purpose of these pills is to prevent hair loss, which is what men need, and hair color change is a side effect. 10 years have passed since the end of the war. Furza is flourishing and developing as if it had never existed. But now problems of a different nature arose. Jan came to the free food distribution center. He wondered if there really were so many hungry people in his city. It was necessary to open such a place because a lot of time had passed since the decree on state aid was issued. Jan was angry, he thought. What are these damn officials doing? He is too soft with them. He decided that as soon as he returned, he would order them to be summoned. At that moment, of course, our heroine approached him. The husband and wife met. She told him the obvious. Unfortunately, the back is already closed for today. But they work even on weekends, so you just have to wait until tomorrow. Jan replied, that's how it was. His gaze narrowed, and all because he immediately felt the aura. A woman in men's clothing. What is this masquerade about which no one believes? But what is more important is her energy. Without a doubt, she is an advanced fire rune wielder. There aren't even 10 strong fire rune wielders in the entire empire. And one stands right in front of him. He decided to find out who she was. Jan said hello and asked if she wanted to work for him. Another beautiful face. Kayla froze again, thinking, very attractive in appearance. And for some reason, she has the feeling that she has already seen this person before. But Kayla decided that she needed to pull herself together because her type is black-haired dukes with red eyes. And with her bright hair and green eyes, the traits of minor characters, she tried to calm down. Kayla's strange appearance did not bother Ian. He said that he could provide her with food. As soon as Kayla heard the word food, she immediately shouted, I'll be happy to take on the job, boss. While in the ecstasy of eating meat, Jan was surprised that she was so happy to hear about food. Ian said, great, he's Private Investigator Ray Vorn, liar. Kayla introduced herself as Sasha Lynn, liar. The husband and wife got along great. Kayla asked what to do. Ian replied, he sees that man. He is suspected of cheating on his official wife. Evidence is needed. So Sasha has to follow him, Kayla shouted. Okay, and ran forward. It seems she has decided to take a responsible approach to her little job. Ian followed her, but he wasn't as serious as Kayla, and she motioned for Ian to be quieter. And she went further. It seemed that she was interested in this work. And Jan, looking at her, thought, the red-haired owner of the fire rune, who reminds him a lot of him, was apparently talking about Isaac. The man was carrying something in his arms. He must have felt that he was being watched, because he changed his gait to a run. Kayla yelled. It seemed like he noticed them. Then she called out to him and ordered him to stop. But who would listen to such an order? Of course, the man ran on. Kayla laughed. She decided that the criminal was at a dead end. And Jan, who had come up with this stupid surveillance, was himself surprised that the man suddenly started running away. Kayla, who thought she was about to get the job done, was upset when she saw that the man was the owner of wind runes. But Ian was already in shock. From what he saw, it seemed, everything was more serious than he thought. Suddenly, Kayla grabbed him by the back, and she told him to hold on tighter. Then she, like a praying mantis, calmly jumped over the wall, carrying the Emperor in her arms. She landed perfectly on the other side. For someone who enjoys tearful romances, Kayla herself does not really follow her ideals. Although she condemned Thomas, Ian no longer understood anything. But he still praised Kayla, saying that she was a great employee, and Kayla liked that. And since that person owns the rune, it means he is not a small fish. Now he has no right to miss it. The man ran around the corner. Kayla shouted, "Of course he's meeting his mistress here." Yun, who was not so involved in this matter, suddenly froze when he saw the 4 bronze sevens. While Kayla was wondering why she would meet her lover in such a place, Ian stared unblinking at the door. A lucky box. Underground auction house happy box, no matter how complex the customer's order. They are able to obtain almost anything, however, since all goods are put up for auction. Customers are forced to wait until their desired item is drawn, and even then, the success rate is 99%. They became the most successful underground guild in all the empires. The guy ran in, and the man asked what happened. He decided that he had thrown the guys off his tail and showed what he was holding in his hands. And he said he was able to get it. They hit the jackpot, something that could kill His Majesty the Emperor. It was a great stroke of luck that the Emperor himself was just following him, Kayla asked, asking him not to interfere. Ian understood that she was the owner of the fire rune and was very strong physically. Her help would be useful. But it was better not to involve outsiders in this matter. He said that it was dangerous here, and that it was better for her to forget about what she saw. Kayla shouted since it was dangerous there, he especially couldn't go alone. And anyway, he wanted to go there himself. A well-informed detective shouldn't be exposed to danger. After listening to Kayla, Ian burst out laughing. Of course, Kayla didn't understand anything, and Jan promised that at their next meeting, he would definitely treat her. But today's matter, he asks to leave it to him. Kayla still did not understand what was happening, but obeyed her husband. Meanwhile, rich and nasty people gathered in the hall. The host came on stage and shouted, "Ladies and gentlemen, they are delighted to welcome them to today's auction. For such a renowned gang, they have terrible security." Rich and vile, remaining true to their disgusting habits, they sold a hybrid horse, a guy. And most importantly, the death of the Empire, the presenter shouted. Doesn't the very name of this lot excite the mind? Of course, this couldn't help but attract Jan's attention, wondering what was going on there. Today, Yana is very lucky he met his wife and hit the jackpot. Meanwhile, Kayla sighed. She had hoped that she would be able to eat a hearty meal, but it didn't work out. But even so, Kayla didn't look upset, perhaps because of her husband. She thought that the man was very light. Not at all. She is just strong. He can't even use runes. Again, not true. Kayla imagined Ian as some kind of Ken in danger, imagined him as a poor guy in danger. As soon as she imagined this, she turned around and ran to save her prince. Which was fine. The prices were even higher than the Emperor himself expected. It seemed like the biggest fish in the criminal world had gathered here. In this situation, it would be better to contact the palace guards rather than try to resolve everything alone. Ian was thinking so hard that he didn't immediately notice that Kayla was standing behind him. Finally noticing her, he asked what she was doing there. Kayla replied that he was worried about him, so he decided to slip away. Ian asked how they let him in. Kayla replied that the guards were surprisingly useless. She began to speak enthusiastically. She didn't expect to see something like this in such an inconspicuous building. Jan now realized that his wife was being stupid, and the presenter brought the poor boy onto the stage. And he started describing it as an ordinary product, and all of Kayla's joy quickly disappeared. Ian was about to tell Kayla about his plan, but she suddenly interrupted him, asking, what had they been fighting for all these damn years? She was furious. Kayla was hardly one to control her anger. That's right. Kayla jumped out of the balcony without a second's hesitation, screaming that she was sorry. But there was something more important to do right now. She landed on stage as the host calmly announced the price of 400,000. Noticing her, he finally shut up, and Kayla shouted, "Slave trade is prohibited in their empire, bastards." The presenter tried to quickly fix everything by apologizing to the scoundrels and calling security. Kayla, meanwhile, ran to help the child. She said that she would save him, let him stay close. But suddenly the boy started shouting what she was doing and that he shouldn't interfere. However, Kayla didn't even listen to him. She just hit him and he lost consciousness. And then, as if nothing had happened, she said, "He's so little, but he's already learned to be rude." Jan, who was watching this scene, wondered if it would have been better to listen to him, although it hardly mattered. The scum have several rune owners and are very proud of it, but at the same time they forget that each mage also has his own limits. When it comes to the owners of the fire rune, it is difficult to imagine anything more destructive. Ian wasn't lying. That's how it was. Kayla created such an explosion that it filled the entire space. "It's good that the guys managed to get out of there," Kayla said calmly. It looks like she overdid it. The lack of practice is clearly showing. Finally, the boy woke up and immediately asked to let him go. Kayla let him go. However, the boy continued to look dissatisfied. He said in a serious tone, "How dare they interfere in his affairs? He will never forgive them for this, especially the red-haired one." But Kayla didn't take his words seriously. Stroking his head, she said, "Oh well, at least he could have said thank you." And pointing your finger at people is very impolite, Jan thought for a bit and suddenly asked, "So it was Mare?" Kayla was confused, and the boy was just surprised. He asked how he knew. Jan replied that he understood the situation. They had been watching them for quite a long time. There was no need to hide anymore. Suddenly, 3 figures appeared in an instant behind the boy. Kayla still didn't understand anything, but Ian, on the contrary, wasn't surprised. He said that they were free to leave. After remaining silent for a while, the unknown people thanked the guys and disappeared into the night. Kayla asked who these people were and who this boy was. What does Myr mean? So many questions. Jan replied, "Myr is another kind of magic. It is similar to runes, but a little different." He thought about something. Thinking that this problem needed to be solved first, he said he advised lying low for a while. "The auction house people will try to track down Sasha," Kayla said. Oh well, but when she turned around, Kayla saw no one. Kayla was a little upset that he left so quickly, without even saying goodbye. She said, "Okay, it looks like he can take care of himself. He can take care of himself, even though he looks so frail." And then it dawned on Kayla, food he had promised to treat her if she helped with the work. Nearby, the 3 mysterious men bowed and said, "Lord Seth, it was dangerous. It turns out our baby is a big shot. The man said the operation was too risky. If the Sultan finds out about it, he will be furious." Little Seth said that if those 2 idiots hadn't shown up, everything would have gone according to plan. The easiest way to find his brother. "This is to join the family of a nobleman under the guise of a slave?" Seth asked. They found out who these 2 were. The man replied, "The man with the bright brown hair is the Emperor of the Empire. They haven't found out yet how and why the Emperor hid under someone else's appearance, but the energy gave him away," Seth said with a sigh. "That's why the aura seemed familiar. Now that even the Emperor is aware of the events, they should return immediately." Suddenly Seth realized something. In all this confusion, he only now realized that there was no pain. If he remembered, he was distracted and did not even notice. As his pain suddenly subsided, he asked who the second person accompanying him was. The man responded, asking for forgiveness. They were unable to establish his identity. They only found out that it was a woman. Seth took out his necklace and realized that right then and there, Myr seemed to have stabilized. The man said they needed to hurry. Seth replied with displeasure. Yes, he knew. Then Seth looked at his necklace. It suddenly lit up with a bright light and smoke surrounded Seth. "It turned out the baby wasn't a baby at all," Seth said. "I think she called herself Sasha. I wonder how soon they'll meet again." As he promised, the terrible Emperor decided to talk to his officials. The creepy Emperor said there was a slave auction right in his capital, which is what a bunch of idiots, do around the clock. Owen thought the lunatic didn't even wait for dawn. The Emperor called his officials together in the middle of the night. The terrible storm behind the Emperor was not so terrible compared to Jan. The Emperor said he didn't need any excuses. He had instructed them to look after the city's welfare, but they decided to destroy it. The man shouted, "It was not like that at all. Sir Ryan told them that fish would not swim in excessively clean water." "The idiot is finished." The man continued to dig a hole for him, saying, "Sir Ryan stated that for now they can keep an eye on the criminal underworld. There would be no problems, so it was decided not to touch them." Jan was in such shock that not a single nerve in his face moved. Barely containing his anger, Ian asked if they had followed Ryan's orders and where he was now. The man answered like a captain of the guard. "Most likely, he is now at the scene of the incident. That's how it all happened." The fool of the family was relaxedly examining the place. The fool didn't yet know what awaited him at home, the man said. They had almost cleared away all the rubble. Not a single civilian, fortunately, was hurt. "Looks like they got lucky," Ryan said. Suddenly Ryan noticed a folder with documents and picked it up. "It seems this is the very secret of the Empire." While the workers were telling Ryan about their business, but he didn't care. Now all his attention was focused on these documents. Eugene spread rumors in all sorts of places. Anyone with a nose for money probably heard them. The Sorvan Empire was destroyed long ago, but their descendants were not completely exterminated and now roam the lands of Furza. After 10 long years, they are ready to carry out their plan for revenge. It seems Eugene is talking about those very documents. Meanwhile, Ryan burned the documents and said he wondered what expression his brother would have on his face. Thomas's secret office in the capital of the Empire, Luke said, the people of the Price began to act decisively. They intend to strike at the Emperor himself. Thomas did not expect this. So he started shouting, "What the hell? Why didn't they consult with him, their leader, first?" Luke responded that the elders said they were not satisfied with their plan because the preparations were taking too long. It seems they have acquired some kind of trump card, and now they can't wait to use it to kill the Emperor. The elders said that they would be pleasantly surprised tomorrow night. Thomas sighed and said, "A bunch of impatient old men, to hell with Zen." Thomas has no intention of keeping idiots as assistants who just get in his way. His plan is flawless. The nobles and subjects of the Servan Empire who survived the war with Furza formed a secret organization called Xena. And they put down roots all over the continent, sinking their fangs and claws into everything, so that one day they could revive the former greatness of their empire. Thomas can understand their lack of restraint, as many years have passed since the war. But these people don't realize that they survived it only because they didn't meet John Furtz in person. They can't even imagine what this man is capable of. It turns out that Thomas, that is, Eugene, was personally present at that fight. Thomas said, "Okay, so be it, he will look at their so-called trump card." Luke was surprised. And he asked if he wanted to go personally. It was too dangerous. It was better to send their group there. Thomas replied that he was not going to help them in any way, even if they were idiots, but they would certainly carefully prepare the scene. Since they're in the capital, why not watch it all from the front row? They're starting tomorrow night, right? And our poor girl was completely unprepared for life on the streets. The supplies she managed to get hold of disappeared in a second, as soon as she turned away. And, as she was told, even among the homeless, all the places are assigned. She cannot sleep wherever she wants, poor thing. She did not expect it. That the capital will turn out to be such a cruel city, all because of these two scoundrels. First the damn emperor with his marriage. And now he's a complete detective. He will never forgive them. The little girl didn't yet know that it was the same person. Surely her hatred for Ian would increase if she knew this. Suddenly the boy came up and pointed at Kayla. And he asked if his brother was new here. Kayla answered, "Yes, something like that." "And what?" "He took his place." Suddenly the boy held out the bread and said it was for him. Kayla asked in surprise, "What about the boy himself?" The boy replied that he was given food in the canteen and would be able to get more later. It was free bread, intended for the starving. He looked very emaciated, so he decided that he needed it more. Kayla thought, this capital is beautiful. How quickly Kayla's opinion about the capital changes. After eating, Kayla looked around the street. There was a lot of trash, but what was sadder was that there were a lot of homeless people. So Kayla asked why there were so many homeless people on the street. He thought it was the richest city. The boy asked, but he doesn't know if the homeless and poor intentionally flock here from different regions. Since the emperor is personally responsible for the well-being of the capital, it is much easier to get help and support here. And some vagabonds are even hired. The boy himself is from Marino and lived in a small nearby village. But his parents abandoned him, and he miraculously managed to reach this city. No one cares about the people like His Majesty the Emperor. It's a good thing the people don't know the true character of their emperor, Kayla thought. And all because the boy said that he was from Marino, Kayla's hometown. She probably misses her city. She said awkwardly, "So in Marino there are also many poor people?" the boy asked. "But is there a place without them? Brother speaks like a nobleman, but soon His Majesty will put an end to all poverty in the empire. He has great respect for His Majesty," the little boy said so joyfully when a sandwich was thrown at him. Kayla froze in shock, and the nobles who threw the sandwich at the baby began to laugh. Of course, Kayla is also a noblewoman, but she doesn't look down on people. The man laughed and asked why she was throwing food around. The guy answered, but not seeing, he decided to feed the homeless man. His appetite was lost from their nauseating stench. And where do all these rats come from? What is the emperor even thinking about? He could have cleared out their city long ago. The nasty freak noticed Kayla's angry look and asked why he was staring like that. Was he angry or something? The tramp at least understood who he was baring his teeth at. His nasty smile didn't hang on his face for long. The beaten idiot screamed, "How dare the tramp? Apparently the spoiled fool has not learned any skills." It seemed like all he had was his father's money. He kept yelling that Kayla wouldn't get away with this. The rules here are strict. The guards came running as soon as she hit someone once, but at Kylie's house everything could be resolved with a simple handshake. Actually, it wouldn't have been difficult for Kayla to get out of that situation by using the rune, but we all know that our poor thing hadn't eaten for a couple of days, so she didn't have the strength for magic. Kayla just fell to the ground. It seems like she can't take it anymore. She needs to eat properly. Maybe at least they'll feed us properly in prison? The guard officer shouted, but Kayla dreamed of food. The man Kayla beat up was the youngest son of a high-ranking official, not to mention that street fights are strictly prohibited. The guard officer ordered not to ignore him, and to tell his name, age, and where he was from. And for what purpose did he come to the capital? Kayla decided to pull herself together and just tell the truth. Naive, Kayla really told everything as it was, about her father and about her marriage. Of course, the officer didn't believe her, and after a short silence, he asked for identification. Kayla replied with a smile, lost, and now our poor thing has become a condemned person. The defendant was convicted of armed robbery. His name, age, and occupation are unknown. He probably entered the capital illegally. There are signs of psychological deviations and delirium. May be dangerous to society. No need for further investigation. Verdict 3 months in prison. Bye-bye Rome and the expensive sword, the man asked. The first time in prison, Kayla screamed, she was unfairly imprisoned. Or rather, she is partly to blame, but the blame does not lie solely on her. Even though she hit one idiot once, he brought it on himself. And in general, it was self-defense. This is real arbitrariness. The man nodded and said, everyone says so. Night fell, and all the jailers, except Kylie, dressed in black robes. These were the very same silver Xena killers that Thomas spoke of. They began the operation to eliminate the Emperor. All the guards had long been asleep. The man said that when taken in the right dose, the wild mushroom powder works great, and it's good that they collected the right amount. The antidote is also working. The moon is much brighter today than usual. This may worsen their camouflage. The bald man said it was a fine night to kill the Emperor. The silver assassins packed up and left, but they didn't know that the sleeping pills had no effect on our heroine. The little girl stood up, stretched, and asked what this fashion for sleeping pills was. She was tired of waiting for them to leave. Kayla decided that in the presence of all these suspicious people, it would be better to pretend to be asleep, as she often did as a child. But after hearing their conversations, she thought it was too serious to just ignore. So Kayla decided she needed to find the duty officer and report everything to him. But when she went out and looked around, she didn't see anyone. She was on the inside of the palace, but for some reason there wasn't a single guard here. How irresponsible it seems for our heroine to be cleaning up someone else's problems again. Meanwhile, Ryan returned home as if nothing had happened and loudly greeted his brother. But his joy didn't last long. His crazy little brother appeared in front of him in a second with an outstretched fist. Ryan barely held his brother's fist as he spoke. That's where the little bastard is. What a mess Ryan has made in the city. If even one slave was sold at the auction, Ryan would shout, "Wait a minute, don't get excited. There's something more important to do right now. My brother needs to go out to the garden immediately. Ian didn't expect this. Ryan said there was a present waiting for my brother there." "He tried very hard," Jan asked incredulously. "Was he up to something stupid again?" Ryan laughed and said, "Okay, let him show at least a little bit of trust. His brother won't be disappointed. He promises." The silver assassins continued to run through the garden. Then one of them asked the leader, "He doesn't find all this suspicious. There should be plenty of security here." But they somehow got in too easily, and still haven't met a single guard. The bald one just asked, "So what?" They work for Xena, after all. The elders probably made sure that nothing would interfere with their operations. Jan went out into the garden, looked around, and coldly asked what he was supposed to see here. In an instant, he was surrounded by men in black robes, and they slowly began to approach him. And then Ian realized that the little bastard had dared to use him as bait, and now the bastard was definitely finished. The killers threw some kind of crystal at Jan and shouted, "He got caught. Some kind of magic enveloped him." And then Jan asked, "This is a technology for containing magic. It seems to be quite expensive." The bald man answered, "That's right. A huge amount of money was spent on it. The magic of the Furza Knights is truly impressive, but because they rely entirely on their runes, which can be easily suppressed by such devices, it's just a matter of power. In the end, the Emperor himself became a victim of such a simple trick," Jan said with a creepy look. "It seems they don't know a damn thing." Rune Knights do not rely on external sources of mana because they are extremely ineffective and easily destroyed with just a little force. But the murderers shouted, "Nonsense, his own pride has destroyed him and they attacked him." Ian just smirked and asked if they really thought that was enough. and Thomas changed his clothes and came to watch how the Silver Assassins would try to kill the Emperor. When Furza finally defeated Servan and became the absolute power of the entire continent of Ashi, the secret organization Zen inherited the goal of the defeated empire. There was practically no industry. Wherever their hands reached, bribes, the black market, gambling, they did not disdain anything to collect money. And they secretly trained professional killers, but after 10 years of fruitless waiting, their leaders began to turn into impatient old men with clouded minds. And yet, Xena remains the main driving force behind revenge. Thomas was angry. He considered them old idiots. His own brother betrayed the Emperor. Ryan is a stupid slacker who was lucky to be born into a good family. What a stupid conclusion. It's hard to find a person more devoted to Jan Furza than Ryan de Furza. Despite the crystal that was supposed to contain Jan's magic, he easily killed each of the assassins. And they drowned. Jan asked discontentedly, and that was all they could prepare. What non-entities? At that moment, the guards came running. Just in time, Clara asked what the hell was going on. All the guards were suddenly gathered and ordered to wait inside. And then the intrusion alarm sounded. Jan said terribly, "Nothing special, just his brother decided to give him a gift." Clara asked, "But why no one warned them?" Ian sighed and said that he did not kill anyone. It looks like it was Xena's people again. Ian ordered to pick them up, Clara replied. Yes, she flew out information from them when they gathered, Owen said. By the way, it's amazing that the garden remained safe and sound, Jan said. His mother loved it very much. If this had been any other place, there would have been devastation all around, but because the Emperor's mother valued this garden. Yan deliberately used only the water rune so as not to break anything. It seems they decided to give a drop of kindness to our sadist. Yet, even the most experienced masters find it difficult to control their energy so precisely. It was a real surgical operation, which only such a special Yan in the entire empire was capable of. Ian returned all the water back to the fountain and told Clara to bring Ryan here immediately. Clara answered without a shadow of a doubt, yes, and Owen was visibly worried, but whatever Ian did to Ryan, the bastard deserved it. Owen quietly asked Clara where he thought he could be found now, and Clara sighed and asked how she would know. The boys decided that Ryan was probably hiding from the Emperor again. The satisfied fool, not understanding anything, walked around the palace. The fool thought that the more he thought, the more he admired his own genius. He managed to get Xena's rats to come out of their cellars with such ease. Moreover, he immediately presented them to his brother on a silver platter. Ryan really thought that his brother would praise him. Then he noticed Kayla and quickly flew up to her, asking who they had there. Kayla stared at Ryan, who wondered what was going on. Not even panicking, he finally noticed the number. The fool seems to have forgotten Kayla. He said that if she tries to escape, she should go there, and there is a palace on that side. They will definitely catch her there. She doesn't want to be accused of a serious crime, but Kayla only asked what was going on in the palace. Ryan replied that he could hardly tell her. Kayla replied that she just needed to know that the Emperor was okay. Then Ryan asked why she was interested in this particular thing. Kayla answered calmly. Taking care of His Majesty is everyone's duty after all. They all live in the same empire. Ryan didn't seem impressed, but he still said, yes, she was right. Well, there's no need to worry. The Emperor is completely fine. Without listening to Ryan, Kayla ran away. It looks like our fool has forgotten Ryan too. Ryan turned around and asked. He had told her that the palace was that way. Although she was just a runaway, there was no point in worrying. And yet this is a very unusual girl. It's rare to meet the owner of a fire rune. She wasn't even nervous when she met him, and her manner of speech was like that of a soldier. But what's more important, the feeling that they've seen each other somewhere doesn't leave, both idiots thought. It seemed like it finally dawned on them, but even so, Kayla didn't care and ran on. But Ryan knew he was in trouble when he finally realized it was Lady Kayla, his sadistic brother's wife. While Ryan was wondering what the hell she was doing here, Kayla was thinking that this would be a good opportunity to meet the Emperor in person. She will be able to ask him all the accumulated questions, and at the same time ask him to drop the charges against her. Finally, she will at least look at her husband's face. The naive girl probably thinks that her husband is kind. And her creepy husband ordered that the guards must make sure that not a single mouse escaped from the castle today. His wife was running towards him while no one was visible. Suddenly, Kayla heard voices. She turned around and saw her husband, Owen, and Clara telling Ian that they still hadn't found Ryan. The naive girl joyfully ran to meet her husband, apparently deciding that he was kind and nice. But as soon as she approached him, our killer attacked with ice runes. Luckily, Kayla wasn't there, Owen was in shock, and Ian just said that it looked like a rat just ran by. While Clara was clapping for her sadistic emperor, Owen said that magic shouldn't be thrown so carelessly. The floor is destroyed. Now we have to do repairs. I need to somehow restrain myself from runes at least sometimes. It turns out that our little girl was saved by Thomas, whom we knew well. Surprisingly, Kayla immediately recognized Thomas. Even though he was wearing a mask and I didn't recognize the fool Ryan at all, the ice blocks dispersed. Thomas exhaled and asked what my lady was doing here and what kind of uniform that was. Did she escape from prison? Kayla didn't answer his questions. She just looked at him. And then she noticed the robe, the same robe that the Silver Assassins wore. Then she remembered Ryan's words about the fact that she could be charged with serious crimes. Kayla stood up abruptly and, taking a stand, said that, actually, she should be the one asking what he was doing here looking so suspicious. Duke? No, Director Thomas. Kayla released a fire rune, which surprised Thomas. Looking at her, he thought. At first, she seemed simply strange to him, but now it is clear that this is an extremely unusual girl. No, he could have guessed from the start that she was an excellent fighter, and besides, hybrid horses aren't just for everyone. But why he just saved her, Thomas could not explain. But although our little one is strong, she is not the brightest, so Thomas came up with a plan. He asked how many points he got today. My lady said that you can only get a pass by getting 90 points. Kayla flinched and asked why he was suddenly talking about this, but to distract her, Thomas pinned Kayla against the wall. This scenario, where a handsome dark-haired and dark-eyed guy pins her against the wall many times, Thomas said, Duke of the North. He must be strong, cold-blooded, mysterious, and beautiful. The poor guy was so embarrassed he needed to get out of here first. That was all he could think about. Kayla gave him 95 points when suddenly a loud laugh rang out. Our fool came, but the frivolous guy, instead of interrogating them, only laughed. He barely spoke. He was sorry that he was interrupting them. He was just trying to catch up with my lady, but the fool kept laughing and quoting what Thomas had said, who was just trying to get out of the situation. The fool was laughing so much that he didn't even notice how Kayla and Thomas ran away, and Ryan just said he missed her again. Then he thought, surely this prisoner Lady Kayla, apparently she recognized the man in the mask. But it didn't seem like they knew each other well, and this man, Ryan, was trying to remember Thomas. His dark hair and bright red eyes 10 years ago, just after the end of the war. 16-year-old Ian suddenly said, Eugene Weiner, he has black hair and red eyes. 12-year-old Ryan asked if he was the same one, the descendant of Sir Vaughn. Ian answered, that's right, he'll be 12 this year, just like Ryan. Then Ryan asked, he thinks they'll meet him again someday. Ian let out a tired laugh and said, Ryan swore he'd find him himself. It was only a matter of time, surprisingly, but Ryan remembered Thomas, whom he had never seen before, and it took time for Kayla to remember. Then Ryan said, and the boy had matured quite a bit. Suddenly a creepy voice was heard asking, who is he talking about? Ryan turned around and saw his creepy brother Ryan couldn't even find words from fear. It was clear from Ian's face how angry he was. Ian asked if Ryan would explain what the hell he had done to his palace. Ryan said in a trembling voice that the thing was, they had been trying to track down Xena's people roaming the Empire for a long time. It was a thorn in their side, but he was able to convince them that he had betrayed the Empire and met them in person. He orchestrated everything so that they would jump into their trap themselves, giving them false weak points and vulnerabilities. And while all their elite fighters were sent on an operation, he infiltrated the headquarters and destroyed everything there. So he managed to exterminate these rats. It was scary that Jan continued to smile. Clever Clara and Owen quickly ran away, and Ian asked, so it was because of Ryan that all the hired killers came to the garden. Ryan laughed and replied, oh well, he personally felt like he deserved the praise, so Ian praised him. The boys have already run far away. Kayla said that it's probably hard to track them outside the castle. Kayla turned to the director. Thomas shuddered. It seemed that he would not get rid of her so easily. Thomas remained silent, but Kayla began to tease him, saying that he had passed the exam for the Northern Duke. Then Thomas begged her to stop. He already wants to go underground. Kayla laughed and said, okay, she guesses he had his reasons for getting into the castle. So far, the suspicions have been removed. As expected, the little girl is stupid, Thomas said. She turned a blind eye to it quite easily. He probably shouldn't say that, Kayla replied. She was an escaped prisoner herself, and if he were a bad person, he probably wouldn't have saved her. Thomas suddenly realized that he could have either not saved her initially or finished her off right then and there. When she started to suspect him, it would have been much easier. So why was he acting so strangely with this woman? Kayla kept talking, and finally she said that she had forgotten her sword at his place. Thomas replied that he had kept it until she arrived, but first he needed to do something. Namely, find a better outfit for her, and really, she can't wear prison clothes. Even though it was night, the capital was still bustling, the man said. It seems like the capital is noisy today. Luke replied, yes, as expected, Ryan's information was false. The man's name was Homer. He is Eugene's main partner. Luke said that Xena's headquarters is currently depressed. The Rune family, besides being a fake surname and identity for Eugene, became the financial backing. To create the Tom Holden Corporation, the Rune family once managed the secret funds of the Servan Empire. Homer said it was hard to believe that Xena would let someone like that get close to her so easily. Luke thought Homer Rune was one of Xena's supporters, but his goal didn't necessarily involve reviving the Servan Empire. The reason Rune supports the rebel forces, little Eugene told Homer, is that one day he will revive Servan. He will become its ruler and make the Furt's empire pay for everything, especially him. Jan Furza, that damned bastard. Eugene was seething with anger and spoke without holding back. He would rip this bastard's heart out with his own hands. Luke tried to calm down at least a little. Luke had been by Jean's side since the beginning, and Homer suddenly spoke up. Unfortunately, he is not particularly smart. Either in politics or in military affairs, he is just an entrepreneur. Someone who knows how to handle money, and the most important quantity for any entrepreneur. It was this ability to see the value and potential of every person that made Eugene stop crying when Homer addressed him. Eugene Weiner de Servan, from this day on he recognizes him as the sole heir to their empire, said Homer. However, he invests his time and money not in the empire but in him, His Highness. Homer Rune did not rely on the revival of Servan, but on the potential of one single person, Eugene. Luke reported, the gentleman said that he intended to personally observe what was happening, hoped that he would not get into trouble. Homer replied, Eugene is not one of those who are so easy to catch. Suddenly the assistant said that the young gentleman had returned and another lady was with him, and the guy's reaction was appropriate. Homer, shocked, asked what it meant. The assistant said that he had a girl in a prison uniform with him, and then Luke understood everything. He asked if she had red hair by any chance. The assistant replied yes. How did he know? The assistant shouted. The master ordered to prepare a bath for her, and also to pick out clean clothes. Then Homer panicked and shouted, asking what to make of this, since Eugene had sworn that he had no intention of being distracted from his main goal. Luke replied, the thing is that perhaps, Mr. Eugene, you are already at that age to find yourself a companion. This is not critical after all. The young man is allowed to feel a little romance. After this awkward silence, Homer announced that he had made the wrong bet. Luke screamed to himself as he saw Homer's disappointed face, while an exhausted Thomas sat in his office. In the end, he had to bring her here. Thomas thought people might misunderstand him. But he couldn't just leave her on the street like that. He brought home a kitten from the trash can. However, nothing more. As soon as Thomas returns the sword to her, this strange connection can be broken. The naive guy is in for a lot of surprises. Our heroine is not an easy one. Only now did Thomas notice that the sword was very old. It had been well looked after, but time was merciless, he could have guessed. The fact that it is already over 100 years old clearly indicates that the blade is far from ordinary. It could be patched up and modified. This weapon could be a real treasure. How could she forget it so carelessly? And indeed, Kayla knocked on the door. And Thomas told her to come in, and he thought, okay, after all, the sword doesn't even belong to him. Thomas was just about to say hello when he suddenly swallowed his tongue when he saw Kayla. The dirty kitten has been transformed. It seems Luke was right about the romance after all. Youth? What can I say? Kayla found a beautiful dress somewhere. She said that a warm bath is the best thing that humanity has invented. She thanked the director, but he still couldn't come to his senses. Thomas couldn't understand why she had suddenly changed so much. To drown out his feelings, Thomas almost killed himself with a punch to the face. Thomas returned the sword and said, "Here is the sword she left." Kayla awkwardly thanked him. Then Thomas said that since the item was now in the owner's possession, she could, and then it dawned on him that it was already midnight, so he stopped. And he said that he would give her a guest room for the night. Kayla again awkwardly thanked him, saying that it was very kind of him. Then she asked if the director could spare some time for her tomorrow. Morning came, and Kayla had already managed to find the thieves and punish them properly. These two stole all her things and her ID was in there. All that remains is to withdraw the money, and she will finally be able to redeem the deposit. But Thomas had already managed to forget about this story because it was he who set it all up. It was just a pretext to determine her identity, but simply refusing the money now is too suspicious. The poor thing decided to take the money anyway. He thought that it was not a problem for her because she was a noblewoman, but Eugene did not yet know that. The bank he thought was the end of all this mess will reveal an unexpected truth. Kayla was informed that there was no person named Kayla Marilow on their client list. But Kayla wasn't going to give in so easily. She continued to speak loudly, "Kayla Marilow, she even has her ID with her." And the girl repeated to her that she had already double-checked several times only Isaac Marilow was listed in the Marilow family. Kayla claimed that her name was definitely on the list, so they decided to check other families. Thomas thought she wasn't on the list. She was becoming more and more suspicious. The kid didn't yet know that soon he would be even more surprised. The girl finally found Kylie's name, but not on that family's list, but on her husband's family's list. Then the girl asked with a cold sweat, "Kayla Marilow de Furza." All the people also froze. But Thomas decided that this was simply a mistake in the documents, since he knew for sure that only 2 brothers survived in the Furtz family. Theoretically, this is only possible if she is an empress, but this is some kind of nonsense. But Kayla continued to stand silently, either from shock or from something else, and then Eugene froze. The ground beneath her feet became soft, and Eugene wondered why Kayla wasn't correcting her. It couldn't be true. The girl asked Kayla to go inside, and she was taken to the bank's honorary guest hall. The situation was getting more and more complicated. Kayla awkwardly asked if she was definitely allowed to be here. Madame Sigrid, the bank's director, was also in a panic. She replied that she couldn't make her wait in the main hall. She must have been surprised to tell the truth. They have special treatment and conditions for cooperation for members of the Imperial family. They didn't even know they had a new empress, the headmistress said fearfully. Kayla wanted to explain that everything was wrong. But explaining everything to her was too difficult. The headmistress decided that it was possibly classified information. She shouldn't ask her. Then she laughed awkwardly and said, "There is no need to explain anything. Everyone has their own secrets." Madam almost called her Your Majesty, but Kayla asked to call her Lady Kayla, so Madam did. She explained that it was impossible to withdraw money because the depositor calculated it for 20 years in advance. In other words, she will be able to withdraw money from the account when she turns 30 years old, or with the consent of the trustee, Isaac Marilow. He also added that under no circumstances should the rule regarding withdrawals be violated. And he said that he trusted his daughter. Kayla asked that the thing was that she urgently needed cash. Were there any other ways? Mom replied that she had the right to withdraw money from her legal spouse's account, and there was an awkward silence. Kayla asked hesitantly, "Speaking of her husband, did Madame mean the Emperor?" Madame answered awkwardly, "That's right, they are married after all." Then Kayla asked if the Emperor had the right to withdraw state money without the ruler's knowledge. Madame responded, "Only if it concerns the state budget. But the Emperor's personal account is always accessible to his wife. Besides, His Majesty's property is very large. She must know that the family code recognizes common property after marriage. Under a government contract, the bank allows the spouses to manage this property." Kayla asked to get to the bottom of it, and the lady replied that if the lady wanted to withdraw money, they were ready to provide it right away. As far as His Majesty was concerned, Kayla thought, if you think about it, they had started this whole mess themselves. The error arose due to a miscalculation by the palace, and they still haven't gotten around to filing for divorce. Kayla decided to take revenge, but by withdrawing the money, she essentially agreed to compensation. Is it worth living in exile for 10 years? Then she came up with something. The little girl didn't know what a terrible, not the best person John was. Thomas obediently waited for her outside the door. He was shocked by himself. He didn't expect that he would be so obedient. He thought that with each new meeting she seemed more and more strange and unusual. Besides, there are many suspicious moments hidden behind her eccentricity. Every time he begins to think that he has understood her. Something inexplicable happens again. Kayla calls the director and Thomas looks up. Every time this girl manages to surprise him, Thomas thought, looking at how Kayla holds the black card in her hands. Kayla said she was sorry she was late. She had to get her card. "I don't think I need to explain what the black card means." Kayla said that it was time for them to go. Somehow it was too pathetic, Kayla added. There was still some business left. Thomas was no longer surprised by anything. It seems that the guy has come to terms with the fact that he will never understand this strange girl. When he followed Kayla, Madame thought she had called the man director. Yes, it is undoubtedly him, a man whose fortune is comparable to the budget of a small country. Director of the Tom Holden Corporation, Thomas Rune. Why did such important people come to them at once? Meanwhile, Jan continued to make a scene in his palace, throwing documents at his assistants. Once again, John is furious. This month a record was set. It turned out that the application was rejected. Now it's clear why Kayla hasn't received the divorce papers yet, and there's no need to explain how angry Jan is. He continued to yell at how they could reject the application. The assistant explained that the thing was that it had not been registered for several generations. Not a single case of divorce of the Imperial family. They recently discovered that, according to the law, the Emperor and Empress must be present in person to give consent to the divorce, after which the certificate is sealed in a magical artifact. Jan was shaking with anger, asking why the hell they came up with all these ridiculous rules. The assistant answered. To prevent the Emperor from abusing his power, Yang sighed and said, "Okay, then let them just bring Lady Kayla." Owen said the ambassador of the Merlo family has arrived, and it is reported that the Viscount's daughter is missing. There was a second of silence, and then Ian yelled, "Let them find her, you empty-headed cretins," and then there was a rant, which we will skip. When John spoke, he plopped down in his chair and wondered if she had run away to avoid expulsion. She took things to the extreme. He no longer cares that she is the daughter of that very Isaac. Let them find her. Suddenly, Ian shuddered. Red hair, uses fire magic. He recently met such a girl who spoke of war, of law, and used the fire rune, and then the terrible Emperor froze. He probably didn't expect this outcome, and at that time Owen was asking Ryan about Kayla Marilo's appearance. They need data to begin their search, and Ryan has been to the Merino estate. Ryan said she had red hair, almond-shaped eyes, and a slightly round face, a naive expression, and she is also wearing a prison uniform with the number 3058. Owen didn't believe it, so he said it was a direct order from the Emperor. It was better to refrain from jokes. Ryan said he wasn't joking. Owen said irritably he'd just skipped the part about the uniform, but then Ryan added, "This is the absolute truth, if his words are confirmed. Is Owen ready to take responsibility for not writing this point down?" Owen was probably surprised by Ryan's serious tone, and at that moment the door opened. Ian came and asked why Owen hadn't left for the Viscount's estate yet. Owen awkwardly asked what. He didn't have time to prepare, His Majesty, since he gave the order only a couple of hours ago. He needed to finish his business in the palace. Instead of answering, Yang simply summoned the ice rune. The sadist nudged Owen, and he began to quickly finish all the work. Ryan asked if the Count was going to see Isaac Marilo. Could he join him? Owen was surprised that Ryan wanted to go too. Ryan said he had personal business in Merino. Owen exhaled and said he had no reason to refuse. Owen finished writing and handed the documents to his assistants, saying that the leaflets needed to be handed in as quickly as possible. "It's a matter of utmost urgency," Ryan said. "They're in a hurry," the Count remembers. Owen shouted. "He knows." Only Sir Hans wanted to ask Owen something, but Owen said he relied on him and ran away. And then a guy came running and shouted, "The bills for the work in the gym have arrived. Sir needs to review and approve them." Then Hans handed the documents over to his assistant and asked him to finish the work with the leaflets. The guy read, "Wanted extremely important person, reward, 500,000 rubles, prison number." That same boy was in a good mood today, and all because he was given 2 loaves of bread at once. But the baby's joy didn't last long. He was grabbed and slammed against the wall. That loser showed up again. Apparently he decided to take out all his anger on the child, since Kayla wiped the ground with him. His insignificance just increased. Not only did he decide to beat up a child, but he also brought 2 thugs with him. It seems he believed that by beating the child he could somehow make up for his humiliation. But the unexpected guy got what he deserved before he had time to hit the kid. Kayla said that if he were in her area, she would break his legs, so he might consider himself lucky. The thugs also turned out to be cowards, so they picked up their idiot and ran away. The baby thanked Kayla, then she asked if he remembered her, since it was with her that the baby shared the bread. Then the kid immediately imagined Kayla in dirty clothes and was able to remember her. He asked if she was the older brother. Kayla laughed and said he seemed surprised, and Thomas stood awkwardly nearby. Thomas was wondering why he was doing this, first waiting for her to get the card, and now dragging her down the street. Kayla gave me a bag of money and said there was more than enough money to get to Merino, and there was also a letter. With it, he will be allowed into any establishment, and later she will be able to take him to work in their estate. Of course, the baby was shocked. He asked why his sister was doing this for him. Kayla smiled and replied that she understood that life wasn't easy for him back home. She's sorry to send him to Marino again, but it's the only place she can help him. Kayla asked the baby to wait for her there. Apparently, Kayla was going to return to the house. But will she be able to do this? The baby said goodbye to her. Kayla waved to him. Thomas finally asked, "She is very kind to this boy. They had known each other before." Kayla replied, "No, she simply repaid bread with bread," Thomas said in surprise, despite her high-born position. From the very first meeting, it was clear that she was very different from ordinary aristocrats. Where else would you find a noblewoman who is proficient in martial arts? Kayla explained that she had often been to the front since childhood, and probably she did not notice the class inequality because of her irresponsibility. Her title closed her eyes to it. What difficulties ordinary people go through, but thanks to this same title, she can now at least somehow help them. Kayla suddenly said, "It seems she has been talking too much. This time she will definitely be able to pay off the debt to the director." Thomas only smiled at her while he thought, "She bears an Imperial family name, and since childhood she took part in the War of Two Empires. She possesses a rare fire rune, managed to escape from prison, and now she has also received a black card, but what is much more important? What is her connection with the Emperor she doesn't want to let go? How can he keep her?" Thomas desperately tried to think of something that could delay Kayla. And Kayla said that it was time for them to go, but then Thomas called her and asked. As far as he remembers, he had already scored more than 90 points, so he decided to play the same game again. Thomas decided to play at romance again, because it was easy to fool Kayla with this. Kayla asked, "Yes, so what?" Thomas remembered that Kayla said that she would allow herself to be kidnapped if he scored more than 90 points. And she herself said that Thomas passed the test. Thomas reminded her of this too. He came closer and asked what Kayla had to say. Her continuation still stood. Kayla blushed but said, "No, jokes aside, she couldn't really allow herself to be kidnapped." Thomas wasn't going to give in so easily. He followed her and asked, but she had already given permission for this. Then Kayla turned around abruptly and asked what had suddenly come over him. Thomas answered awkwardly. His ladyship had caught his attention. Kayla asked right after she got the black card. Thomas sighed and said that it wasn't that at all. He is afraid that they will stop keeping in touch once the debt is paid. He wants to get to know her better. But there is an insurmountable wall between them. Is there really no other way out for them? The asshole used his good looks and sweet words to fool our heroine. Kayla turned and walked forward. Thomas asked where she was going. Kayla coldly replied, "To the bank." Thomas no longer understood anything. Kayla Marillo, having spent her entire childhood on the battlefield, later she enjoyed a quiet life on the family estate. She graduated from the academy in Marin with honors and read more than 100 novels about the Northern Duke as part of her academic work. The only problem is that our heroine has exactly zero experience in real relationships. Kayla walked in a hurry, all flushed, and thought, "What a scoundrel. He realizes that he is handsome, and now he is trying to seduce her." Thomas wondered if she didn't want it herself, and Kayla thought, and yet his face, maybe she should agree. But then she told herself, no, she had to pull herself together. She hadn't come to the capital for an affair. And Thomas thought, it doesn't matter, he won't let her go anyway. They turned to each other at the same moment. Kayla screamed, the director should listen to her. She understands his feelings, but she was busy with important things at the moment, and it was at that moment that the piece of paper fell on her face. Of course, it was terribly awkward. Thomas could barely contain his laughter, but what was on the piece of paper was more interesting. Kayla suddenly asked angrily what it was, and then Thomas stopped laughing. He walked up to her and asked what was wrong. Kayla was shaking from what she saw. They were throwing leaflets all over the street, and the guy was shouting, "Kayla Marillo, 21 years old, a young girl with red hair and almond-shaped eyes, wearing uniform number 3000. Currently in hiding, wanted for committing several serious crimes. Warning, wanted person has great power. Please exercise caution. Urgent decree from the Imperial family reward 500,000 rubles, hundreds of houses." Meanwhile, Ryan and Owen were still driving to Kylie's house. Ryan called Owen. Owen, who looked more like a ghost, opened the window and asked what was going on. Then they stopped. Owen came out and immediately threw up. Ryan asked how the Imperial advisor was. Owen should be stronger. Owen asked, "They have been racing at full speed for a whole week. What else did Ryan expect?" Ryan was all beaming and answered, "But there was no need to sit in karate the whole way." Owen thought that it took superhuman endurance to get on a horse at least once in a while and breathe some fresh air. Ryan said this is where they would part ways, Owen asked. Ryan said he had personal business. What exactly brought Ryan to such a remote place, Ryan thought, and said slyly. He can only say that he needs to check something. Owen thought it was odd, since Ryan wasn't the type to leave the capital voluntarily. But he didn't care. He needed to focus on his task. Dad was in terrible condition. He said in a heavy voice. He was waiting for the Count's arrival. He was glad to welcome him to his home. Then he cleared his throat and added, he asks for forgiveness, he is not feeling well. Just as Owen was about to say he had come to find out when Isaac had last seen Lady Kayla, Isaac gave a mock cough. And he shouted, since the moment she disappeared, his health had deteriorated completely. He was a bad actor. He put a bandage on himself, put down the unnecessary burner. The complexion is perfectly fine. Isaac was screaming. He couldn't even get out of bed. Owen was silent. He didn't understand why Isaac was acting this way, because it was in his best interests to find his daughter. What was the point of this circus? And Isaac hoped that Owen had bought it. Owen asked if there was any idea where his daughter might be headed, or even a direction. Isaac said sadly, he doesn't know. She left in the middle of the night. His poor heart can't bear it. If only she were found. Then Owen said he was sorry, but he had to say it. According to Article 12, relatives of the Imperial family are obliged to take all measures to protect them. This means that they must use all available resources to search for Lady Kayla, Isaac replied. Only he and her daughter live in the estate. They don't have many servants, and it's unlikely that any of them are capable of conducting searches, Owen said. No, Isaac has people. The Order of the Knights of the Red Lion serves under his command. Isaac Krinka, the order was disbanded immediately after the end of the war. Owen asked if the Viscount did not have the right to reassemble it. Then Isaac shouted, this is not the case, Owen declared. It was him. Even if it was a mistake in the documents, at the moment Lady Kayla is the Emperor's wife, and this cannot be taken lightly. They are very much hoping for the Viscount's cooperation and will allocate all the necessary resources themselves. Isaac stated that he will begin work as soon as he recovers. And how can he, a frail old man, gather the knights again? His heart aches terribly. Why did Kayla do this to his father? As Isaac spoke, Owen imagined the image of the sadistic emperor and fell out of his chair. The maid and Isaac shouted, what's the matter? He's fine. Owen replied, he's just tired from the road. He suddenly felt dizzy from the long journey. In any case, the Viscount would have to obey the Imperial order. But Isaac fell back onto the bed and said how much it hurt. His heart. And on the floor, Owen was whining. Everything was going dark before his eyes. Each of them whined as much as they could, and it was not even clear who would emerge victorious from this fight. Meanwhile, in the capital, security forces joined the search, directly contacting citizens, asking if they had seen Kayla. They grabbed every red-haired girl. The whole capital was in a state of noise. Everyone was looking for Kayla. And our guys ran away from the center into the very depths of the alleys. Thomas said that here we can take a rest. Kayla was angry. She shouted that blonde knight from the palace, she would strangle him with her own hands. Thomas realized she was talking about Ryan, then took off his suit and put it on Kayla. And he asked, it seems the situation is not easy. Does my lady have a place to hide? Then Kayla awkwardly asked if his offer still stood. The guys arrived at the capital port of Temerika. Thomas, like a proper gentleman, helped Kayla down. Luke was here too, Kayla asked. So this is the largest port of the capital. Poor Kayla wondered why things had turned out this way. First, she had been very unfairly put behind bars, because of which she had to run away, although there is a bit of her guilt too. Perhaps she did the wrong thing. But is this a reason to declare a search? And why is this man looking at her so intently? Luke simply believed that Kayla, the girl who had captured the master's heart, was a fugitive criminal. Thomas seemed pleased with the way things had turned out and said they would sail on the ship. Kayla nodded. She knew that right now she could only trust this man. She asked if they really had to sail across the sea. She thought it would be enough to wait in some secluded place. He is the head of Tom Holden. He probably has a lot of shelters even in the capital, Thomas replied. This is problematic. The reward for her capture is too high to hide her. He would have to contact third parties. Some of them will certainly be tempted by such a sum. None of those people can be trusted completely and entirely. They might even have tails following them on their way to the port, so they should hurry. Kayla asked if he had a ship ready, and where they would sail. To Thomas replied, yes, they would sail across the ocean on his vessel. Then Kayla turned around and saw a small boat. She asked if this boat could sail that far. Thomas chuckled, then said, "They're coming this way? Here it is, his ship," and pointed up. What a boat, although it shouldn't be surprising since our Thomas is a rich guy. Equipped with a powerful magical engine, it can accommodate over 1,000 people, has hundreds of cabins and all kinds of entertainment. Theaters, restaurants, conference halls, etc. Cruise liner of the Toma and Tourism Company, Table Dream Book. Kayla asked in a trembling voice if they were really going to sail on this. Thomas answered briefly, "Yes." Then he took her hand and said, "This flight is only for my lady." The bastard is trying his best. Kayla tried not to show it, but in recent days she had been extremely depressed. She possesses outstanding courage and willpower, which helps her to face any challenges. But more and more difficulties continued to fall on her head, starting from marriage and ending with being declared wanted. However, now that she had boarded the ship, she felt that she could finally rest. This series of events would have exhausted anyone, but now our heroine was able to take a deep breath. Thomas asked what my lady was doing. Kayla replied, "How is it that it is every girl's dream?" Does the director know? It's probably strange to ask this now, but isn't Thomas afraid, helping a wanted fugitive? It's too much of a risk to his reputation, and besides, the capital will certainly notice the sudden departure of such a vessel. Thomas thought about it and asked how about discussing it all at the table. As soon as he sat her down on a chair and snapped his finger, a bunch of assistants set the table. They even threw some petals around to add atmosphere, but Thomas acted as if nothing had happened, saying that they were in no danger at the moment. The Dreambook table is on an exclusive route regulated by the Ferd's Empire. There is no reason to worry. Besides, they are sailing to a very popular place among Tom and tourism clients. The Duchy of Floria is the only point in the entire empire that enjoys some degree of autonomy. When Kylie heard about the Duchy of Floria, her eyes lit up. The newspapers wrote that it was definitely worth visiting at least once in a lifetime. #1 on the list of the most popular resort areas, and also #1. For their honeymoon, that same Floria, Kayla sails there with Thomas. Who is going to destroy the Ferd's Empire and the Emperor is Kayla's husband? Thomas replied, "Yes, it was she. Perhaps my lady would finally reveal her true identity to him. If the girl he helps ends up being the deposed empress, he really was risking a lot." Kayla winced, but Thomas was right. Kayla thought, Thomas really did help her a lot. There was no point in hiding it anymore. The poor thing didn't know that this sly fellow had his own hidden plans. Thomas silently asked, "Come on, come on." Kayla finally said, "Okay, now Thomas will find out that everything is not as he thought." Floria, an island located south of the mainland of Ashi, has a mild climate all year round. And also the Emerald Sea, gentle waves and luxurious coral islands. A popular resort area among the nobility with incredible natural beauty. People literally call it paradise on earth. Kayla was so happy as she ran across the sand, Thomas walking behind her holding her shoes. And Kayla screamed, "The newspaper wasn't lying. The sand here really is soft, like silk, and there are so many shells." Thomas thought it looked like she was going to call him Duke now, but it didn't seem like Thomas was against it. He told her that running barefoot on the beach was dangerous, but Kayla said there was no need to worry. She had strong feet. As soon as she said this, she crashed into a stranger. The heroine decided that she crashed into some kind of pole. But it was a man. He said how awkward. He asks for forgiveness. Miss was not hurt. However, now Kayla was still frozen and staring insolently at the man. This man is the 12th Prince of Floria, Andrew Fami de Floria. Kayla continued to sit on the sand. Then one of the assistants said that in front of her was the great Prince Flori. Then Kayla jumped to her feet and said, "It is an honor for her, His Highness." Andrew laughed and said, "Formalities can be omitted." Things aren't that strict in Floria, but Kayla continued to stare brazenly at Andrew's body without even blinking. Finally, Thomas joined the conversation. He said hello, and Andrew greeted him just as easily. It seemed like they had known each other for a long time. Kayla asked if the Duke knew the local prince. Thomas replied, "Business relations." Andrew said, "So she is the companion of his dear friend. If so," then he pulled out a flower. And she caught it on Kayla's hair, then said that golden hibiscus grows in Flora. He thinks the flower complements her fiery red hair perfectly. He is delighted to welcome her to their beautiful Flori, and their holiday will be unforgettable. Thomas sighed and thought he was back to his old ways. As soon as he saw a girl, he did it right away. But he doesn't think that Andrew satisfies my lady's preferences because she likes the image of the Northern Duke. It seems like they've become closer since Thomas is so confident that Kayla will like Andrew. Although this was true, Kayla, already intoxicated by the guy's beauty, asked what the prince meant by an unforgettable vacation. Andrew laughed and replied that she seemed to be impatient and highly recommended visiting the night market. Kayla asked if the prince would be willing to accompany them. All the romance had passed Thomas by, but it seemed he didn't like it now. Could it be that our cold duke was really interested in Kayla? He called her and said that it was time for them to go to the house. Her current outfit is not very suitable for these places. They will pick something better. Kayla took the bait. She shouted joyfully, "The duke is right, we need to hurry." While Kayla was talking about the outfits she wanted, Thomas looked coldly at Andrew and nodded goodbye. It seems that with just one look, Thomas revealed everything, Andrew said. He did not expect such a turn of events. The guys came to Thomas's mansion and Andrew came after them. He loudly greeted Thomas, who was not at all happy about Andrew's appearance. He showed it with his whole appearance, Thomas said. Not even 30 minutes had passed since then. How did they part? Doesn't the prince have important things to do? Andrew said sadly. Oh well, there is no need for the brother to be so cold. And where is his companion? Thomas replied. She went shopping. She seems to enjoy putting together outfits. It will take some time. Andrew said what a pity, but he wanted to admire her beauty again, and here again was that terrible face. It seems the guy is still jealous, Thomas asked angrily, so Andrew came only because of her. Andrew replied, he could calm down, even though times have changed now. But does he dare to lay claim to the woman of His Highness Servan, which means Prince Andrew also knows about Thomas's secret? Thomas replied that she was not his woman at all, but Andrew said of course he would not poke his nose into their relationship. Interesting rumors reached him. It seemed that there was a commotion in the Emperor's palace. Could this really be Eugene's doing? Thomas didn't answer. Then Andrew said, although perhaps he is not very concerned with what is happening on the mainland. After all, he wants to maintain neutrality, which was expected, since Floria is an autonomous island. Andrew believed that Floria was their beautiful pearl. He would not allow her to become a victim of Imperial intrigues. Meanwhile, back at the Marino estate, Kayla's father continued to insist on his own. Just like Owen, Isaac asked if the Count would stop this surrealism already. But Owen continued to play. He asked what it was about. He could hardly make out what the Viscount was saying. Owen turned out to be not an easy one. Although he simply does not want to return to the sadist without results, Owen has been lying in bed for several weeks. And he didn't move. Owen was actually very comfortable. He could have lay like this all his life. The news finally reached Marino. The maid came running and shouted. Both Isaac and Owen were surprised that the young lady had been put on the wanted list with a reward of 500,000 rubles. Moreover, it is reported that she was spotted in the middle of the night at the port with a suspicious man. Isaac asked what other man. The maid replied that for now all that was known was that they had boarded a ship belonging to Tom Holden. Then Owen finally stood up and said, "It's his fault. It looks like things are heading for trouble. He will return to the capital immediately, and he will take responsibility." But then Isaac said that sometimes freedom and wandering are necessary for growth. He didn't want to get involved personally, but since some bastard had picked on his daughter, he couldn't sit idly by. Isaac ordered that everything be prepared for departure immediately. He was heading to the capital, while Earl Owen headed to the estate of Viscount Marillo. Guard Captain Ryan Bartier de Furza was on his way to Marino Academy. Kayla Marillo, a girl who became an empress through a stupid mistake. When they first met, Ryan thought there was nothing to worry about, but she was somehow acquainted with Eugene Servan. Besides, there is also some connection between his brother and her father. Ryan decided he just needed to find the missing pieces, and the best way. This is to conduct his own investigation. He came about Kayla's club, namely the Research Center of the Northern Duchy. Ryan introduced himself and asked if she was the head of the club. Only 2 lines were written about Kylie in official documents. An Academy graduate and founder of the CISG scholarly community, Ryan considered it a mysterious community. I thought it was something important, only Ryan wanted to show off the title. As the girl coldly said in their CISG, personality is not as important as his passion and interest in scientific research. Freedom of scientific thought is the fundamental right of all citizens. Even the Emperor cannot suppress it. Ryan didn't expect this outcome. He asked what she was getting at. The girl responded. He requested information about the activities and a list of all CISG members. They cannot just reveal the results of their work. What was his purpose? Ryan wondered. He didn't expect to learn anything important. Then he decided to cheat in order to find out everything, so he said that his goal, like theirs, was research. He was always interested in the topics they studied. Is there a more effective community in this area in the entire empire? The girl said that they would then conduct an entrance test. Ryan was confident in himself. The naive man thought how sweet it was that a professor from the boondocks thought he needed a test. Jan needs to work on his upbringing. The bastard is too arrogant. His smile soon disappeared as she asked him to choose the right color combination. Green and brown, blue and white, red and black and yellow. All of Ryan's pomposity vanished instantly. Ryan panicked, thinking it was some kind of code. He had never heard of such tests. He had to choose at random. As soon as Ryan opened his mouth, the professor said, "Time is up." He failed. That's the end of the test. Ryan is not one to give up, he asked. Wait a minute. And the question was definitely asked correctly. Then the girl froze. Cornelia Amber at 11 handed in her geometry paper. At 14, she proved a theorem, and at 17, the scientific community recognized her as a genius. But she turned down prestigious jobs in the capital and came to the small Merino Academy. According to rumors, a certain area of research caught her interest. Ryan asked if the question shouldn't be followed by an explanation. She didn't even explain what these colors meant. Cornelia asked coldly if he really wanted to join here without even knowing the basics. She hopes that he has at least some of the makings of a researcher. But for zeal, he will give one chance, let him master the basics on his own. And then she can try to take the test again. She handed over a piece of paper with some notes. Then she said that the door of truth opens only to those who are ready to devote themselves to knowledge. So much pathos, but this is just a club about romance novels. But Ryan did start looking for answers. On this paper, the library books were numbered, and the club seemed increasingly mysterious to Ryan. Strict admission process, extremely secretive society. Ryan thought such a serious organization had settled in the boondocks. He was interested and decided to start the first book. The Immortal Love of the Duke of the Northern Lands, number 113. Ryan seemed to have lost all interest in the club's secrets in an instant. In addition to his primary position as captain, Ryan owns vast lands in the north of the empire. What is noteworthy is that he owns them as a duke. What makes him a true northern duke? That's the twist. It seems that the novel really captivated Ryan. It's already evening, and he's still reading. Ryan stayed in the library until night and read all the books on the list. After finishing reading, Ryan thought how stupid he had been. In the face of great science, man truly becomes insignificant. Ryan smirked as he remembered Eugene's appearance and said, he must compete to defend his right as the true Northern Duke. Unfortunately, Ryan still has a lot to learn. Ian had just learned that his fool had gone with Owen, while one of them revealed the importance of his title for the first time. Another Northern Duke was enjoying a fine night. Well, almost. Thomas wasn't too happy with the crowd, so he asked Kayla to walk slower. But Kayla liked everything so much that she actually asked the Duke not to lag behind. Thomas asked if she seemed to like the place. Kayla replied yes. The night market is so romantic and atmospheric, and the dress is wonderful, it is beautiful, light, and comfortable. Kayla suggested that Thomas also pick out a suitable outfit. Thomas refused. Kylie didn't even stay with him for a second. She immediately ran away after seeing something. Then Thomas thought that she was like a little child. Kayla asked the Duke to catch up with her faster, and Thomas, like an obedient boy, did the same. He approached her, thinking that a little childishness wouldn't hurt them. Kayla was captivated by the puppet theater and the legend of the great dragon Ashi. Long ago, the world was filled with monsters. The dragon Ashi wanted to help defenseless people. So, together with his friend Kiki, they created a safe land for people. And as a sign of their love for the human race, they gave them a sign of promise. A flower that can grant wishes, Kayla said. The story is like the Furt's Empire, Thomas replied. The island also belongs to the mainland. There are different versions of the dragon on all continents, as well as in his. Kayla asked what it meant. The Duke was from another empire. So our Duke was caught, but he is cunning, and Kale is a fool. Thomas said he grew up in a poor area, and anyway, the theater was over. Kayla immediately picked up the topic and asked whether in this story there was a flower, and in theirs there was a sword. But Thomas didn't listen to her. He relaxed so much with her that he gave himself away. But he day and night inspired himself with the name Thomas Rugen, so as not to reveal himself. A couple of days with Kylie, and he had already dropped his defenses, although he didn't realize it yet. Kayla noticed the crowd and asked if a fight was starting. Thomas replied, "It sounds like a martial arts competition." It's a tradition here, you can't use runes or equipment. Only physical force, the only form of fighting that the pacifist king approved of. Naive Thomas decided that Kylie wouldn't be interested, and Kayla had already stepped forward to fight. Of course, the crowd was shocked. Then they started laughing. The man said that this was not a game. She could get hurt here, but Kylie told him to shut up. The crowd started making noise. They had a sharp tongue. What would happen? And Thomas looked at her and thought, she is definitely a noble lady. Reuben relied on his physical strength and swung without thinking. But Kylie relied more on technique and was able to land the first blow. Reuben stepped back. People were screaming. He couldn't even touch her. He probably didn't want to hurt the cutie. But Reuben thought she wasn't even trying. Where did she get so much strength from? For Kylie, it was really just a game. She was having fun, so she didn't want to end it quickly. People were shouting. The idiot decided to lose to the skinny girl. They bet money on him. This hurt Reuben's ego, and he became angry and lashed out at Kayla. Completely forgetting about the rules of combat, he summoned the wind rune. His hand was already right next to Kayla's face. It seems Thomas is worried about her. Even though Reuben used the wind rune suddenly, Kayla managed to dodge the attack, which surprised Reuben. But the man's ego decided that if he didn't win, he would simply disgrace her, using a dirty trick to kick Kylie. But in the end, he was the one lying on the ground unconscious. And all because Thomas did not tolerate such behavior towards Kylie. People started screaming, "Reuben is a bastard, he just used a rune." Thomas asked if runes were forbidden. The judge answered that it was true. Then Thomas said, if that's the case, the winner is the girl. But the judge declared that anyone who entered the circle became a participant in the battle. And now the competition is between the two of them. Only Kayla was happy about it. Meanwhile, Merino Academy CISG meeting. Ryan got the perfect score, so he's also part CISG. He showed off as much as he could, but in reality the test wasn't difficult. But the girls joyfully welcomed the new member. Cornelia said that they are CISG striving to collect and study relevant literature. Barely containing his laughter, Ryan asked if the professor could tell him about the Great Purge. Cornelia asked how it was possible not to know basic things and told the girl to answer. The Great Purge is an event that occurred in the 3rd year of the reign of Emperor John Ferdz. Their emperor ascended the throne at 16, immediately after the end of the war. The high nobility was extremely outraged by this fact. This led to constant assassination attempts and attempts to overthrow the emperor. There were no titles left in the empire above count, and only 2 families managed to escape the consequences. The exception was the Duke of the House of Lecon, as well as the Duke of the House of Bartier, bearing the surname de Ferzat. Ryan, hinting, asked who is the head of the Bartier house, and the girl answered. The emperor's younger brother, Duke Ryan Bartier. Ryan asked what lands belonged to Duke Bartier. The girl answered, something like the northeastern borders of the empire. Then Ryan confidently asked, so he, Ryan Bartier, was the great Duke of the North. Silence fell over what they were so desperately looking for. The naive guy was told no, they don't fit. The girl said the Duke must have black hair. Ryan asked in a panic, and yet he was in fact a Duke. He didn't surprise anyone. He didn't impress anyone. In the end, it all came down to appearance. And of course, Ryan's character was not suitable. Cornelia shouted, "Student Ryan must sit down immediately." So, having lost to the imaginary Duke, Ryan sat down dejectedly at his desk. The pathos disappeared, and Cornelia announced the schedule for the annual seminar. Attendance is mandatory for everyone, especially for newcomers. Whose membership could be revoked for failure to appear? Ryan asked. This is timed to coincide with the day of the Empire's founding. Cornelia replied, yes, the day of the seminar coincides with this holiday, let me remind you. Ryan is a captain of the guard. But this didn't bother Cornelia at all, and Ryan couldn't leave the palace. On such an important day, Jan would definitely kill. Then he had an idea. Ryan raised his hand and asked for one more question. Meanwhile, in Muta, Rome was living its best life. When Kayla said she would leave it as collateral, he was confused. But now he doesn't work and eats meat all the time. The bastard didn't know that by doing this he was increasing Kayla's debt. The girl said that a group of travelers had dropped in to see them. It looks like this horse is also a hybrid. The horses looked at each other. It turns out that Rome knows this horse. Alexander asked where Kayla was. Rome replied that it happened that way, but what brought him here? And then it dawned on Rome that if Alexander was here, then Isaac was too. Isaac and Owen made it to Muta safely. Isaac immediately spotted Rome. Owen urgently needed to rest at a hotel. He was seasick again. Isaac asked where they got this horse from. The guy replied that he was here as collateral. Now Rome had no time for meat. Nervous sweat poured off him in streams. And that's how Isaac found out that his daughter owed Thomas $50,000. In addition, all expenses for the maintenance of the collateral property are added to the total debt. Isaac wondered what his daughter was doing. He exhaled and said, "Okay, she must be responsible for her actions." The guy asked if the sir was not going to do anything. Isaac replied, "Why not? Because it was the horse that caused the damage." Then the guy asked, "So sir wants to pay off the debt with a horse?" Isaac answered without hesitation, "Yes," and began to bargain with him. He suggested sending Rome to the mine, Rome's paradise turned into hell. So Rome asked his friend to stop the master, but what could Alexander do? After all, only someone with dragon blood in her veins can get him to talk. Who is now about to fight the Duke of the North. Kayla said they finally got a chance to fight. Thomas asked if he could play along, but was my lady sure? After all, he is not one of those who is used to giving in. Apparently these two are really going to fight. Thomas knew he couldn't let his guard down because Kayla was damn strong. If he is too careless, he will quickly regret it. Of course, Thomas doesn't intend to fight her seriously. However, he will not give in. The referee announced the start of the battle and Kayla attacked without wasting a second. She really does enjoy fighting. Thomas noticed that Kayla was about to kick, but Kayla instantly raised her leg, which Thomas apparently didn't expect. And yet he managed to defend himself. He grabbed her leg and quickly lowered it. Why didn't he counterattack and just hold Kylie's leg? Kayla asked what the Duke was doing, and Thomas, confused, asked him not to raise his leg so high. It was still visible, but Kayla only hit him because he opened up. That was the end of the battle. Thomas went down after one blow. In the morning, the guys went to the port, and Kayla decided to tease the Duke. She asked, "The Duke wasn't very upset about yesterday?" And she said she was ashamed that she hit him when he was distracted. Thomas asked her not to think about it and quickly changed the subject, asking what she would do. Kayla replied that, according to the documents, she was still the Empress, and one could not hope that the problem would resolve itself. So she's about to return to the capital when Kayla suddenly noticed something. She shouted, "It's a pirate flag." Thomas explained that this was a neutral zone, so they were allowed in. But Kayla wasn't worried about the law, she was worried about the pirate boys. Her imagination was already running wild, imagining herself as a handsome pirate. "That's why I asked them to go to them and promise not to create problems." Thomas was glad that she realized that she was always drawn to problems. He doesn't mind going there, but it's not what Kayla expected. The ship was filled with refugees, Kayla asked. "These really are pirates." Thomas just sighed. But the man behind him replied, "Refugees, after the Great War, many lost their homes. People who couldn't settle anywhere now live on ships and no one wants to take them in. They don't have citizenship, so they have to fly a pirate flag. Luckily, King Floria understands their situation and even supplies them with supplies." Kayla replied that she didn't understand, because the ruler of Furza had accepted all the surviving citizens of Servan. It was stated that no one would be expelled from their native lands, so why did refugees appear? The man sighed and asked, "My lady is a noblewoman, isn't she? Can the misfortunes of war be on everyone's side? Someone always benefits, and someone loses everything. Where will the emperor get the resources to help all the residents? Even if people start complaining, what should they do when Furza has already seized their lands?" Kayla remembered that the baby had said the same thing, and she felt ashamed. The man said that he had talked too much, and if they had seen enough, they should leave. And Thomas thought that this was reality. John Furza maintained the image of a war hero and a noble ruler, but his essence is far from this. But Kayla said the emperor had personally declared that all people in the conquered lands were rightfully considered subjects of Furs, and that every citizen of the empire has the right to a safe life. The man simply asked how he could have said otherwise. Kayla replied, "Yes," so she pointed to the ship and asked for the Duke. "Sell it to her," Thomas sighed, then said, "Of course, for refugees who have no home, it will be a good shelter." The Tabosonic is a marvel of marine engineering and a vital link in the Tom Holden fleet. It's worth at least 20 million. Thomas forgot about the black card. Kayla took it out and said she would pay immediately, and that's how Tom's ship went. Kayla Murillo passed on, and with this document, Kayla came to the refugees. And she declared that from now on, this ship is their home, by the grace of Emperor John Furds. It's unlikely to help the refugees much, but we'll let that slide. Eugene had many times the urge to object. For example, because of the embezzlement of money from the emperor's personal account, or because the refugees are still wearing this flag, or because Tabo Dream Interpretation was renamed to Jan Furs. But what worried Eugene more than anything else were the dubious and even dangerous cries of the refugees. Namely, "Praise be to the king," the pirate king John Furza, however. Now Eugene can legally bring charges against Jan Furza. This was an opportunity he couldn't miss, and Jan Furza's wife helped him with it. The man ran into the office with all his might and called for Count Owen. Sir Hans asked why the Lord suddenly started shouting. The Lord asked where the Count was. And the Sir replied, "The Count went on a business trip," the poor Lord screamed. Through tears, he said that someone had withdrawn 20.5 million from His Majesty's account. Sir shouted who dared to touch the Emperor's property. The Lord replied that the money was withdrawn from a black card issued in the joint ownership of the spouses. In other words, the runaway Lady Marilou is spending the Emperor's money. The poor people came to report this, but Jan's appearance frightened them. As luck would have it, he has an audience scheduled today. He will definitely finish them off. The boys were trembling at Jan's door. None of them dared to enter. Luckily for them, Clara came and asked if there were problems again. The Lord replied that it was so and asked if the lady was in a good mood. Clara, smiling brightly, replied, "Yes, the long-awaited guest had arrived." The man announced, "Let's welcome Isaac Marilou." Isaac and Owen and their companions finally arrived in the capital. Near the door, Owen noticed his assistants who were trying to explain the situation. However, he didn't understand anything and simply walked past. Isaac Marilou, a former knight of the King's Guard, earned his reputation on the battlefield. Bravely leading the Order of the Red Lion, he was granted a noble title and lands after the war. Only the Viscount himself and his only daughter remained in the Marilou family. This is where the information ends, but judging by Jan's reaction, there is clearly something else. Earl Owen and Viscount Isaac greeted the Emperor, and our eternally dissatisfied John didn't like something again. He greeted his dear guest in a very unusual way. If anything, the old man and the sadist took the swords away, and the guys didn't even notice. Ian said he was sure Isaac would ignore his words as usual. Did he really have any free time this time? Isaac chuckled and replied, "How dare he ignore the Emperor?" In his absence, Jan greatly improved his fencing skills. Owen was confused and asked what was going on. Clara came to the rescue again, she whispered. The Count must not be in the know. Sir Isaac once taught the Emperor fencing 20 years ago. Just before the war began, he resigned as Commander-in-Chief of the army. Jan said, "The Servan army has already crossed the borders, truce. The truce in Rekhan will soon expire, and they are on the brink of war." Even his father said that their army needed a strong general. In such a situation, where was Isaac going to go, leaving the capital? Isaac shouted, "He is not abandoning her. His sword still faithfully serves the Furs Empire. For her protection, he will do everything in his power no matter where he is." John interrupted him and shouted, "So why is it that Isaac has always been there since the moment he was born, but he is unable to even explain the reason for his departure?" Then Isaac confessed that his beloved was carrying a child, and now, as an adult, John asked, "You never know how things will turn out." That same daughter became his formal wife. Isaac sighed and asked, "But what kind of search is this?" And Owen asked then, when the Emperor was barely 7 years old. Clara replied that everything was much better than she expected, and yet he had sworn that he would kill Isaac the next time they met. His bloodthirstiness was awakened at such a young age. Finally, Owen asked the question that everyone was interested in: how old was Clara? And only now did Jan see what kind of leaflets were thrown around the Empire. And he said, "Owen managed to chop wood again," Isaac added, "and the drawing was unsuccessful." Jan said that it seemed that this was why Director Thomas suddenly sailed to Floria. If so, it would not be difficult to bring her. Isaac asked if the Emperor would really sail with him. Jan interrupted him and declared that Isaac was not sailing, but would guard the palace and maintain order. The guy's reaction was more than logical. Owen screamed, "This is unthinkable. The Emperor wants to entrust the Viscount with his powers. Isaac looks like he's going to have a heart attack." But Ian said he wouldn't trust the palace to that fool Ryan, and he had no direct descendants. So the father-in-law will be in charge, but the father-in-law is in question. Andrew couldn't stop laughing when he heard about Ian Furs, the Pirate King. There is no one who has not heard this proud name. Jan not only gave the pirates a luxurious ship, but also sent enough provisions to last them for several years. Andrew said it seemed like his brother had let his guard down with the lady. Eugene replied, "It's not just because of that woman. There was just a small hitch with the funding of the plan. Purchase of land in the Lurt Mountains due to the unexpected discovery of a gold mine. Land prices have skyrocketed," Andrew said. "They're so close to the finish line." So when they organized the building ceremony, Eugene replied, "Immediately after the founding of the state. It's been a couple of weeks since they arrived here. The Duke told Kayla to make herself at home. Despite the beautiful location, Kayla begins to worry that she has wasted too much time. Why is there still no reply letter from my father? He was supposed to receive her message. At that moment, someone approached Kayla, and it was none other than our sadistic emperor. He asked, as if nothing had happened, that it was very bright today and whether the lady would like to take shelter from the sun. Kayla forgot herself for a second because of her beautiful face, and then asked. They had never met anywhere before. The liar lied that this was their first meeting, and Kylie believed it, all because she was busy looking at his face. The Northern Duke requires black hair and red eyes, and this man is blessed with a royal combination of yellow and blue colors. Kayla thought, and even though she drooled over her half-husband, she still decided to stay on the Duke's side. She told herself that her heart belonged only to black-haired people. These two? Why did they spend the whole day together as if they were on a date? Although they were husband and wife, how could it be otherwise at home? Kayla told Thomas about her love affairs. Who didn't like it at all? Thomas said coldly. The lady had a good time, although she met that man for the first time. Kayla said that it was all because the Duke was too busy to relax together. Was he jealous? Thomas remained silent. It seemed he was truly jealous. Kayla just laughed. And Thomas already wished that he had deviated from their joint vacation. He felt bad that Kayla was so careless, he thought. Is it really that easy to meet random men? Besides, she said that he is the only ideal. She is definitely jealous. Thomas thought all that mattered to her was that the man was handsome, while Kayla described her husband's appearance. And then Thomas pushed aside his jealous thoughts and thought, bright hair and blue eyes. Then he asked for what purpose the man had come. Kayla replied that he wanted to restore his health. It seems that he even has the title of Duke, but Thomas said that after the Great Purge there were no such people left. Kayla said he seemed like a foreigner, but Thomas was still worried. In his sleep, Thomas continued to tremble and shudder, and all because he was dreaming of the past. There was a pile of corpses around him, the ground was covered in blood, and the fire was blazing. Then, the sadistic emperor approached her and said with a furious look, "It seems that this is the last offspring of the Imperial family." Eugene de Servan, still little Eugene, could not utter a word and only cried. Jan suddenly asked if Eugene knew his name. Eugene was silent for a moment. He replied, "Jan Furza, it turns out little Eugene was holding a knife. Even in such a situation, he had a plan." Jan said, "That's right," and asked, "Eugene is Arya Reckon's son, right?" His mother is Athena Recon's half-sister, which means they are cousins. Eugene did not expect such a turn of events. And judging by his face, Eugene did not like this news at all. He suddenly attacked Ian, and it seemed that Eugene's action surprised him. But the baby failed to injure him, Eugene asked cousins. What nonsense is he talking? How dare he? Jan Furza will pay for what he did. Ian raised his sword and Eugene winced when Ian said that it was useless to talk to him now. He will give him time to cool down. Let him come when the scar heals. They have something to discuss. Ian did not kill Eugene on purpose. Eugene opened his eyes abruptly, waking up in a cold sweat. The wound on his leg, left in that very battle, burned, and Eugene cursed Ian again. Eugene's godfather, Homer, said it was a pity he hadn't had time to prepare a proper reception. He did not expect that he would have to receive the acting emperor early in the morning. Isaac decided to visit the Rune family. Owen takes the post of advisor to the emperor, so he's accompanying Isaac. Homer thought they came unannounced. Referring to the Imperial decree, is it really after that incident? There was a leak, but Homer carefully covered his tracks. Isaac was serious, he said. The thing is that Homer's son has run away with his daughter. As fathers, they must resolve this. Homer choked and asked, the girl with red hair. Isaac nodded, and then Homer screamed, she seduced Thomas herself. Thomas, from his early childhood with such attention, he raised him sensibly. And all just so that a slob would take him away? Isaac shouted, slob, she has her own style and natural beauty. In short, the two fathers were arguing about who seduced whom. Owen intervened in their quarrel and whispered something to Isaac. And then Isaac said the details were just revealed to him. Thomas canceled all of Thabosonic's flights and hastily assembled the crew. Isaac laughed, deciding that he had won the argument. Let's leave the fatherly arguments aside for now. Isaac won the first round. Meanwhile in Floria, Jan for some reason acted like a romantic with his wife. He even brought flowers. Kayla didn't suspect anything. While she was basking in the romance, Eugene froze when he saw Ian. At that moment, Jan saw Eugene. It seems that these two are heading towards their goals. With Kayla's help, and Kayla didn't understand anything, the meeting between Ian and Eugene took place. After so many years, Eugene couldn't believe it at first, but it was Ian. Jan stared coldly at Eugene but thought nothing of it. The guys pretended that this was their first meeting and the plot was drawn out. Thomas invited Kayla to relax with a guest at the estate. Then he asked John if he had the right to invite a lady's friend to his villa. Kayla was right, it's a battle of dark and light, awkward. Jan said the lady had told him a lot about him, and according to her, the Northern Duke could be trusted. Thomas replied that it meant the guest had sailed here to restore his health. Even Kayla felt this strange atmosphere, a kind of confrontation. She decided, yes, this is it, the love contest between the tyrant and the Duke. Another of our Kayla's fantasy theaters, Jan coughed mock-cheekfully. It turns out that Jan is a good actor, pretending to be a poor guy. He asked Kayla to make him some tea, and the naive girl immediately ran out of the room. The masks fell, Jan asked. What kind of plot is he up to? Eugene snorted and said, "Cough, how ridiculous." Jan said that 10 years had already passed. He didn't think that Eugene would grow up to be a hunter of other people's women. It seems that all this secrecy of Thomas was useless. Eugene told himself to calm down. He wanted to kill Ian now, but he had to stick to the plan. Besides, there's no point in making a mess in Floria, Jan said with a sigh. He's lucky to come as soon as the scar heals. A scar in the literal sense. Eugene asked if the scar was still there. It seemed like he overdid it that time. Ian stood up abruptly and said, "It's strange, he controlled the power." He wanted to look at the scar, but Eugene was against it. What a strange relationship these two guys have. Jan continued to insist that he would only take a quick look, and Eugene ran away from him and fenced himself off with everything he saw, but it didn't work. Ian pushed Eugene to the floor and climbed on top of him. It seems Kayla is superfluous in the story. Eugene thought this guy was still as crazy as ever. Ian turned out to be very strange. He knows everything. So what is the point of these spy machinations of Eugene? He said it was really offensive. He tries to be gentle with Jin because he is his only cousin. But he was forced to kill Eugene's father and brothers. Then Eugene got angry and said that he should leave his hypocrisy. He never cared about the rest of the family, but he will not forgive the death of his mother. Ian didn't understand what Eugene was talking about, and at that wonderful moment Kayla walked in, and she saw that the two guys were doing just fine without her. There was an awkward silence as Ian was still on top of Eugene. She asked, "So this is a different kind of confrontation?" Her imagination ran wild again, and this time it was no fault of hers. Eugene tried to explain everything, and Jan sighed and said he almost saw him. Kayla wasn't against this turn of events, but Eugene was, and Ian returned to the hotel. And he said that Kayla was now with his cousin, Clara. Ian said that they lived together and they turned out to be closer than he thought. It seems Kayla doesn't know his true identity, but who knows? Clara asked, and he left them there alone. Jan stated, how could he not? He had to play the role of the sick Duke. Kayla is surrounded by only moons. Clara is also unhappy because she had to work so much. But he only goes on dates, Jan stated. He wanted to get to know his wife better. Finally, Clara shouted, their girl is not his toy. Kayla is the youngest knight of the order. She has grown up before the eyes of her comrades. Finally, someone stood up for Kayla, and Ian was surprised because Clara had never contradicted him before. It was Clara who strengthened Kayla's immunity to poisons, and she insisted that Ian not treat Kayla so dismissively. Earlier, Eugene lied that the guest staggered. He wanted to catch him and lost his balance. Kayla said, and she thought about it, decided to tease Thomas. And she added that she even thought that it was not worth interfering. Thomas repeated that everything was not as she thought. Seeing Eugene's expression, Ian thought about it and said to Clara, before they return it, there are some things that need to be checked again. At night, this maniac came to Eugene's house. He hides his identity when communicating with Kayla, to find out what the Red Lion's daughter is like. The meeting with Eugene was an unexpected turn of events. He found 2 escaped rabbits at once. So the trip was extremely successful, but something was troubling the tyrant. He heard voices and realized that the 2 were in the same bedroom. Kayla, as always, embarrassed the boy by offering strange things, this time a massage. The embarrassed boy refused and said that she couldn't barge into someone else's bedroom. And Kayla said that the Duke can deny it as much as he wants, but he understands how he feels. He seemed hurt when she started spending time with another person, and he even entered into a competition with the guest to see what conclusion could be drawn from this. He misses her so much, Thomas screamed. Not at all, but Kayla could no longer be stopped. Her massage was more like torture as she tried to spend time with him, although this terrible massage was taught to Kyle by soldiers. So the baby will have to suffer a little. Jan no longer understood anything. Kayla continued to gobble up Thomas, the poor thing more embarrassed than any romance novel heroine. Finally, Thomas decided to take action and grabbed Kayla. and pushing her onto the bed, he ended up on top. The situation only got worse. But even now, it seems like only one of them is embarrassed. And it wasn't Kayla. Oddly enough, she continued to speak cheerfully. It seemed like this was the second time. Thomas looked at her in surprise. Then she reminded him of their meeting in the palace and added, "The Duke is rapidly improving his performance," Thomas said. He would have liked to rest in solitude. Kayla listened to him this time, but Jan still wanted to evaluate his wife's skills. As soon as Kayla came out, her husband attacked her with a wind rune. Kayla managed to avoid this attack. Ian was impressed by her excellent reaction, and Kayla was scared that she didn't feel his presence, although he was standing near the door. Then she realized that this was not just another petty thief. He's dangerous. Now Kayla has become more serious. Our little girl spent almost her entire childhood on the battlefield, and her warrior instinct screamed that she was facing a very formidable opponent. In order to survive, she needs to resort to the strongest move Jan did not expect, that she will use the fire rune in the building. It was a difficult situation. Jan could have easily dodged or counterattacked, but this will cause a big stir, and then that guy will start causing him problems. The ruler Floria has already warned that even if he were emperor 3 times over, he would create conflicts and restrict entry. Jan himself is not thrilled, but he will have to use this technique. Kayla didn't seem to know what this technique was. Jan began to draw some kind of star in the air. As soon as Ian did this, something changed in Kyle. Finally, Thomas ran out of his room and called Kayla. He felt strong magic, and then he noticed Kayla on the floor. Kayla was shaking all over and apologized for letting her attacker get away. Suddenly, she discovered that she could not use magic. Thomas helped Kayla into bed and began to explain what had happened. Rune Morris, that is the name of the spell that was cast on her. Rune magic essentially draws energy from nature, and its use cannot be interrupted, but Rune Morris is able to muffle its flow. For now, Kayla won't be able to use the rune, but this is temporary. Kayla asked sadly, "Will the magic really come back, really?" Thomas said, "Yes, the lady can sleep and gain strength." But Kayla called the Duke. Thomas asked what was wrong. Suddenly, Kayla asked how long the Duke would call her lady. Can't they just be friends anymore? She wants him to just call her Kayla. A little while later, Eugene returned to his room and told him to pull himself together. He decided to establish the identity of the attacker, Rune Morris, not everyone can use. For this magic, it is necessary to use 5 elements at once. In the Empire, the owners of the runes of darkness and earth disappeared, and the spell itself has not been used for 100 years. There is only one person on the entire continent who can use this technique alone. The 5 elements mage, John Frieza, wasn't hard to guess. Eugene thought maybe it was a warning, but how did he know this spell? He was worried, but decided not to change the plan. Jan would be killed by the end of this year. In the morning, the target himself came to visit. This guy has no conscience. The guys, as always, smiled at each other artificially. Eugene said that some crazy bastard broke into their house at night. So Kayla is not feeling well today, but at that moment Kayla appeared. And now, once again, Eugene will have to endure Ian's smirk. And Kayla asked Ian if she looked good. Ian replied, "Yes, great." Eugene pretended to wish them a good day, but suddenly, Jan asked the Duke of the North to accompany them. He has something he wants to tell the lady, and he needs to hear it too. And so the 3 of them came on a date, or whatever that is. Eugene wondered what this Jan was up to this time. And then, Ian asked if the lady had heard of a man named Eugene Vine. Kayla replied, "Of course, one of the princes of the Servan Empire. This scoundrel was already in the hands of the Emperor, but Yang let him go. The father was very angry that Emperor Servan and his children were birds of a feather. And now the bastard is walking freely somewhere. It would be worth catching him." While this scoundrel hadn't yet caused any trouble, Yana was bursting with laughter. Kayla asked if the Duke was from the Furza Empire, and Ian replied, yes. Then Kayla said that it turned out she had mistakenly called him Duke. Ian replied that there was no need to worry about him. Kayla asked if he was sure that their emperor was a real psycho. Dad served him for a long time and always avoided talking about him. Rumor has it he slaughtered a bunch of nobles in the throne room. Jan said maybe the emperor didn't want to leave traitors alive. "One of them is sitting nearby, but we'll skip that," Kayla said. "It's all nothing compared to the massacre at Carey Fields." Jan interrupted her, saying he forgot to mention since we were talking about her father. She knew that he was now in the capital. Kayla asked if they knew each other. Jan answered quite well. Moreover, he has a connection with the Imperial family, so why doesn't the lady return to the capital with him? Eugene was surprised and wanted to ask why this suddenly happened. But then he shuddered and thought, "Stop. Is there any point in interfering?" All this time he was only Kayla's companion and her protector. She ended up here because of Ian's pursuit, and yet. He remembered how Kayla had called him her friend. Thomas said that she really did have to go back and that he needed to finish his business. Kayla said hesitantly, she would have left anyway someday. Jan stood up and said, then he suggests not to delay. Kayla didn't want to leave in such a hurry, her things were at the Duke's house. But Jan insisted that it was time for her to go home and not worry about her things. He will send a man to pick everything up. Kayla thought she knew she needed to go back, but she didn't expect it, that it will happen so suddenly, and also, they didn't even really say goodbye. Kayla stopped Ian, and she thanked the Duke of the North for his help. She also promised to repay the debt as soon as she arrived in Muta. Eugene replied, yes, see you later, Kayla. He called Kayla by her first name for the first time, which she really liked. Kayla and her husband walked out of the restaurant chatting about something. While Eugene silently watched them go, the super-fast ship Hermes is equipped with a magical engine. In just 3 hours he can cover a huge distance, and it is rightfully considered the fastest ship of the Empire. Ian asked if she liked everything. Kayla answered yes, she had never been on such a fast ship. The ship really does belong to the Duke, the beauty and the money. He's a lucky man. Jan replied that he had a very good income and was not without influence. Kayla thought, usually such phrases are disgusting, but he is truly an impressive figure. Ian stated that perhaps he could influence her problems. With the Imperial family, and at that moment, the crystal sparkled. The sad guy looked into the distance of the ocean, and he convinced himself that he had made the right decision. He told himself there was no need to worry himself with unnecessary thoughts. Eugene was about to leave when suddenly the old man addressed him by name. He told his real name and said he didn't expect to meet him in such a place. Eugene looked at him with displeasure and asked how dare he. To call his name so unceremoniously, he barely survived the disaster. And now he dared to come to him. It seems that a long life has taught him nothing. The old man shouted, His Majesty is about to turn away from Xena. Eugene said, it seems the old man doesn't understand the situation. Who allowed the idiots to carry out that insane operation? They themselves are to blame for allowing the organization to be humiliated. The old man replied that it seemed that His Majesty was still planning to carry out his plan. Jan Furza has just left Floria. It's all over. Everyone will know once and for all who truly serves the great empire of Servan. Jan Furza will never set foot on the continent again, the most powerful and influential man in the Furza Empire. He is also a man with a huge number of enemies. Wherever he is and whatever he does, he never has the right to forget that there is a knife at his throat. Jan relaxed because of the pleasant atmosphere. Soon everything would explode here. He made a mistake, and a thorough investigation should have been carried out. But this didn't worry Jan too much. He could easily cope with it. But Kayla didn't know about his abilities and wanted to help herself. Rune-activated spells can no longer be cancelled. When 2 different advanced-level runes collide, there is a powerful explosion, so the guys are finished. Clara, who was watching the ship, witnessed the explosion. The explosion was so fast that Clara didn't even understand what happened. But fortunately, our guys were alive almost. A few hours ago, a moment before the terrible explosion, Yang created a protective barrier and distorted the shockwave, and at that moment, even Kayla realized that the person standing before her was the Emperor. Finally, she realized it. Jan surfaced and said, Everything went wrong. First, we need to save the girl. But the girl he wanted to save swam away from her with all her might. Jan swam after her and asked why the lady was swimming away. Kayla remembered what she had said to the Emperor's face, and the way she behaved around him, so she decided to run away. Jan shouted, Stop! If you continue to swim away, you will be executed. This guy has no skills in communicating with people. But in the end, he still caught her and they sat down on the shore. Now it was awkward to sit opposite my husband. She decided that since he was the Emperor, she had to serve him. This seemed to amuse Jan, he told her. To make her relax, let her think about what to do next. Kayla said that at dawn she could explore the area and look for a place to live. Or maybe right now, Jan replied. It's unlikely to be of any use. After all, they were on a desert island, and Kayla didn't expect this. And our little fool successfully completed his business trip. And a few weeks later, he returned to the capital. He was surprised to see assistants running back and forth in the palace. Isaac and Owen called him. Ryan asked what brought Sir to the capital. As far as he remembers, Sir stated that he would never come here. Then Owen explained the whole situation to Ryan. All the tasks that he abandoned, that is, entrusted, must be completed. They hope Ryan's arrival will make the job easier. Of course, the fool didn't care about this, he just ran away. Meanwhile, our couple began their first day on a desert island. I need to figure out how to get out of here quickly, thought Jan, while his wife brought a snake as their breakfast. Jan was not as enthusiastic as his wife. She suggested looking for fruits. Kayla said, "But it's better to eat some meat in the morning." Ian sullenly replied, "No," and Kayla gave in. Jan suggested thinking about how to get off the island. Kayla asked if this island was uninhabited and they couldn't get out or contact anyone. Ian answered, "Right." Then Kayla asked, "What if they were stuck here forever? Then they will spend the rest of their lives together, even in this situation." "She's thinking about romance, together for the rest of our lives," asked Kayla. Ian asked. "It upsets her," Kayla replied. "No, that is, she fell into the genre of confinement." She started talking about this genre, which Jan did not understand at all. Now, Jan, too, was thinking that this woman seemed increasingly strange. But to her credit, she set up a shelter for the night very quickly. And she hunts well. Jan admitted that her survival skills are impressive. Isaac must have taught her everything, Ian thought. Kayla was still talking about romantic genres when suddenly, there was a sound. It was a ship. Kayla was screaming. They noticed a distress signal. Jan said it looked like luck was smiling on them, but he didn't know yet. Whatever ship was sailing towards them, the pirate flag was fluttering proudly. And the men shouted, before them was the majestic ship of John Furza. Let them be grateful for the mercies of their great pirate king. It seems like Kayla isn't so happy with her idea now. And the psycho asked if some dirty gang of pirates was using his name. Moreover, without his knowledge, Kayla decided to confess. Kayla explained that they were not pirates, but refugees, and that they were good people. She bought this ship with His Majesty's money and gave it to good people. There was a second of silence, and then Jan asked, with his money. Then Kayla explained the situation about the black card. Jan now knows how many problems his wife has created. Seeing the sadist's reaction, Kayla carefully returned the card. Ian started swearing, "It's good that he didn't fight." Then Kayla explained, "All these people lost their homes because of the war. She understands that it is impossible to make everyone happy, but she wants it to be in the world. There were fewer hungry and wandering people. He could cancel compensation. She will try to return all the money," Jan grinned. Ian remembered Kayla's words about the war and about Eugene. And he said she was a trouble magnet, and yet there is a desire to get her. It seems that Kayla did not understand. Her attention quickly shifted to the rescue team. She shouted, "They are already close. There are 2 of them here." Jan suddenly asked if he thought it was his turn now. But before Kayla asked what that meant, as he grabbed her and lifted her into his arms, the boys watched the performance. Jan decided to play Howl, and with the help of wind runes he flew up to the ship. Now the rescue team will have to return empty-handed. Jan looked at the people and asked, "So this is the crew of the Pirate King Furza?" People were whispering, "This is an advanced Rune, a blonde man with bright blue eyes." And Jan asked, "Does that mean he can consider himself the captain of their ship?" People started screaming. The Pirate King descended from the sky, and even the heroine is with him. It seems they remembered Kayla. The naive ones said they always believed that one day the king would visit their people. Jan wanted to ask where this Pirate King came from, but the man shouted for people to bring it, and so the Emperor was transformed into the Pirate King. It seems that Kayla's fantasy has finally come true. The handsome pirate stood before her, and people praised their king. Our sadist was practically glowing, Kayla thought. It was to his taste. And Jan said, "It's funny, not bad at all. These people know how to please the king." The boys were delighted with the praise and began to entertain the sadist. Grandma came and said that she could predict fate. This caught Kayla's attention, and she asked if it was true. Grandma replied, "Yes, you can tell everything from the lines on your hand." This line promises unexpected wealth. Kayla was delighted. But of course, she was more interested in the love story. Jan said, "Exactly, before he forgets, let him return the card." They didn't guess about wealth, but Kayla still wanted to learn about love. Granny said a wonderful union awaits her. Kayla asked if it will be the Northern Duke. A moment of happiness will be followed by a long shadow of loss. Why is her thread of life connected to someone who is no longer alive? Kayla didn't understand anything. She screamed, "She will marry a dead man." And Jan seemed to know something. Kayla wanted details. But Grandma decided to tell Yana's fortune, and Yana said that fate cannot be changed. Grandma said that the connections and lives of each of them depend on the great wheel of fate. The established future is immutable. This is familiar to Kayla. Jan stated that he would refuse. He did not accept witchcraft. These words made Grandma feel sick, but Yana didn't care. He wrote a letter and sent it immediately. And then he said that it was about a 2-hour journey to the base in the Bourbon Strait. The man said the course is unchanged as ordered. Jan said, "Well done," then announced that the king was giving the order. He ordered everyone to come out on deck, then looked around. Then he began to divide people into 2 groups. Kayla didn't understand what he was doing yet, but she was thinking, it doesn't look like he's going to return the ship. They didn't forget about Kayla either, they took care of her too. The girl was grateful, because before Kayla they had no home. Kayla admitted that the ship was bought by the Emperor, her role was to persuade. The girl answered, and yet she was at the origins. They are both great benefactors, but then Jan's voice was heard, who said, the sorting is finished, so the announcement. The crew of John Furza, up until this point, had been using his protection carelessly. If that were all it was, it could be called a humanitarian mission. How dare they call themselves pirates, such a large pirate ship, sailing peacefully in their waters, and even with reverence for him as the king of pirates. And so John announced his only order. The letter reached the Admiral, a personal order from the Emperor. The Admiral asked if this order was real. Why did His Majesty give such an order? From this moment on, under his leadership, they will all become real pirates, the sadist declared. Cornelia, at 17, became a sage, a genius. She does not tolerate the desecration of sacred science, she scolded the girls, because they missed the lecture while reading the book. After reading the book, she and Kylie created their club. Owen was also given this book while he was pretending to be sick. The Northern Duke and the Collar, first edition, uncensored. Owen said he wasn't interested in such novels and would read his own book. Imperial Code of Administrative Proceedings. Ryan said he had a question. What if Northern Duke, with black hair and red eyes, and the Emperor with golden hair and blue eyes, fell in love with a girl with red hair and golden eyes? Who would win? Cornelia stated that the heroine must be blonde. Let's return to the original story, Baron and Admiral Wilson. For many years he defended the waters, an experienced general and one of the Emperor's closest confidants. But more than anything else in the world, he despises pirates. And now he was ordered to arm them, and he was against it. He thought it was a fake, that someone had forged Jan's handwriting, or he was forced to write it under threat. The assistants, of course, could not imagine this, because they know that John is a sadist. The assistant came running and told about the pirate ship. Wilson ordered all troops to prepare for battle. Their goal is the safe rescue of His Majesty. The naive man thought that the sadist had been kidnapped by pirates. Ian scolded Wilson, saying if this had continued, he would have become an emperor, killed by the hand of his loyal general. And so Wilson obediently armed the pirate ship. The boys wondered what was going on in their emperor's head. Wilson called Yan and said that he would not dare to doubt the emperor's wisdom. Supporting pirates with weapons is not the best idea. Ian asked if he was afraid. Wilson shouted, "No, that's not the point. The crew and ship appear completely untrained. Give them a weapon and they won't even understand how to use it." Never mind the battle, Ian admitted Wilson was right. Then he said, but they have two problems. The first fleet is too weak to deal with the pirates. The second was Wilson's own resignation, who believed he had to give way to the younger generation. Ian asked if Wilson knew how to solve both problems at once. From today on, Wilson will become the king of the pirates. Not so good news for someone who hates pirates. But poor Wilson was obedient and faithful. So when Ian said it was an order, Wilson would climb on board, and he will train the people he selects to rob pirates. This is how the Great Jan Furza, the first pirate ship in history, appeared, which was under the patronage of the Emperor. Now the refugees became heroes, and they are commanded by the legendary one-eyed Captain Nile. But all this has not yet come true, it is only the future. So this story is still waiting for its time. And the guys finally arrived in the capital. The sun had already set. Isaac ran out to meet his daughter and the Emperor. But instead of hugging, the daughter and father began to blame each other for their troubles. Isaac asked what she had done, and Kayla said that if he hadn't blocked her accounts. Owen explained the situation, but Ian decided to deal with his runaway wife first. After all, this fugitive is the current empress. Now, everyone was staring at Kayla and shouting she was wanted. She opened a joint account and stole millions. The assholes told about all of Kylie's mistakes. But Jan said they had a lot to discuss. They needed to start with the main thing. He wants to get a divorce before new obstacles arise. Kayla was now a little afraid of Ian, so she agreed. So they came to the conference room for a divorce. Jan decided to skip the formalities and explained. The lady agrees to a divorce, and he does too. Everything is recorded by the crystal. Let him remain silent and he will agree to all her conditions. Compensation, privacy, whatever, Kayla thought. Everything that has happened to her so far? No one will believe it anyway. Kayla nodded, and finally Ian began to speak. But he wasn't even given a chance to finish speaking. Owen burst into the hall, and he shouted, asking for forgiveness for the sudden intervention, but the Emperor cannot get a divorce. He was holding a newspaper in his hands, in which they wrote that the Emperor had a secret lover. 3 years ago, they overcame the difference in stature for the sake of love, lavish gifts including a luxurious magical ship. Even those close to the Emperor did not know whether the Empress would soon be announced. Owen ordered the assistants to leave and not to let anyone in. Ian asked who this journalist or informant was, Owen answered. Before it was established, Kayla asked why not explain everything. Owen replied, "This is not just a gossip column article. This article was written by someone close to the court with the intention of deliberately undermining the Emperor's reputation. If I give an explanation now or finalize the divorce, they will blow the situation out of proportion." It was as if the Emperor had secretly brought in a new Empress and then kicked her out. Our little one didn't get it, but Jan said so. Until this becomes just a rumor, she will have to stay in the capital. Kayla had some strange premonition, she felt it. Clara explained that this would not be easy at all, as the information did not leak through the banks. The head of the bank does not seem like the kind of person who would reveal the palace's secrets. She assured that none of the transactions could be viewed by outsiders. Ryan ordered a search of the Daily Mail's offices. Clara said that if you act too obviously, it will arouse suspicion. The best thing to do would be to simply ignore the news, but Ryan didn't think so.